I take this opportunity to now observe a moment of silence, of prayer, and of meditation. Thank you very much. May I request you to please look at your program. And before we continue, before we proceed, I would like to make the following announcements. Firstly, that all delegates in the chamber must connect to the virtual platform as well as insert their cards to register on the chamber system. Secondly, delegates must at all times switch on their videos. Thirdly, delegates should ensure that the microphones on their gadgets are muted and remain muted at all times. Next, fourthly, delegates who are physically in the chamber must use the floor microphones. So you have to use the microphones where you are. Fifthly, any delegates who wishes to speak must use the raise your hand function or icon. All delegates may participate in the discussion through the chat room. Next, the delegates are required to wear face masks at all times. Next, delegates physically in the chamber must occupy seats marked for that purpose. And lastly, delegates physically in the chamber must at all times maintain social distancing, a distance of at least 1.5 meters from one another, or from each other. And now, honorable delegates, an address by yours truly, greetings. Program directors, as indicated in the program, Minister of Employment and Labor, Honorable T. Ngesi, Deputy Minister of Employment and Labor, Honorable B. Muloi, House Chairpersons of the National Council of Provinces, Honorable Ngwenya and Honorable Nyambi, if they happen to join us. We're not expecting them to be part of the proceedings. Chief Whip of the National Council of Provinces, Honorable S. Mohai, Honorable members of the Executive Council in provinces, Honorable Permanent and Special Delegates, representatives of South African Local Government Association, Councillor P. Klungwani, ladies and gentlemen. We meet once again in the chamber, though not all of us are present, but we meet in a hybrid as agreed upon and as indicated. Honorable delegates, the program of ministerial briefings focusing on the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic gave us the opportunity to assess the measures put in place by government to respond to the ravages of the coronavirus pandemic. This is in order to make sure that we intervene effectively on behalf of the people as we seek to improve the quality of life of all citizens and to free the potential of each person. It is therefore my pleasure to open today's briefing on the progress made on measures to mitigate the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on employment and labor. The briefing is expected to also deal with allegations and cases of fraud and corruption relating to COVID-19 pandemic. In addition, we will receive presentations from the provinces on provincial plans to mitigate the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on provincial economies, including employment and labor. The mission of the Department of Employment and Labor is to promote employment and to regulate the South African labor market for sustainable economic growth through to appropriate legislation and regulations, inspection and enforcement, protection of worker rights, provision of employment services, promoting equity, provision of social protection, and promotion of social dialogue. As honorable members are aware, Chapter 3 of the National Development Plan, NDP, states that achieving full employment, decent work, and sustainable livelihoods is the only way to improve living standards and ensure a dignified existence for all South Africans. The plan states further that rising employment, productivity, and incomes are the surest long-term solution to reducing inequality. And that similarly, active steps to broaden opportunity for people will make a significant impact on both the level of inequality and the inefficiency of the economy. This, according to the NDP, we achieve by expanding the economy to absorb labor and improving the ability of South Africa's people and institutions to respond to opportunities and challenges. The NDP states that we all have to assist the institutions we have creatively redesigned to meet our varied needs. We have to reach out across communities to strengthen our resolve to live with honesty, to be set against corruption and dehumanizing actions. One of the things that the 6th administration of the Republic was mandated to do as a means of intervening on behalf of the people was to prioritize the livelihoods of the poor, to prioritize employment opportunities, to prioritize prospects for employment, and to prioritize the capacity to roll back poverty and destitution. This includes the need to orientate the macroeconomic policy so that economic growth takes place within an overarching strategy of job creation. This has to be done in order to create employment that delivers fair incomes and social protection for workers and their families. Unfortunately, approximately 11 months into the term of the 6th administration, we fell victim to the COVID-19 pandemic, which has had a devastating effect globally. For example, the International Labour Organization estimates that hours worked in the G20, which is an international forum for the governments and central bank governors from 19 countries, and the European Union, which accounts for 85% of the world economy, declined by 14% in the second quarter of 2020, compared with the fourth quarter of 2019. That is equivalent to the loss of about 265 million full-time jobs in the G20 countries alone, and about 400 million jobs worldwide. The organization states that the impact has been particularly hard on workers in the informal economy, who constitute more than 60% of the world's workforce. They estimate that 4 out of 5 workers in the informal economy, that is 1.6 billion workers, have been seriously impacted and have suffered dramatic income declines due to COVID-19. In South Africa, the results of the quarterly labor force survey for the second quarter of 2020, released by Statistics South Africa last month, indicate that the number of employed persons decreased by 2.2 million to 14.1 million compared to the first quarter of 2020. The report states that this unprecedented change is the largest quarter 1 to quarter 2 decline since the survey began in 2008. Program Director, we have agreed that in order to achieve our desired goal of a capable and developmental state that effectively intervenes on behalf of the people, our country should, amongst other things, create conditions of prosperity for its citizens. It should play an active role in guiding economic development and using the resources of the country to meet the needs of the people. And in doing so, it needs to balance economic growth and social development. More important, Program Director, we need to improve the quality of education, ensure mass reskilling for development and innovation. In this regard, Parliament must effectively carry out its mandate, which is expressed through legislating, representation, and overseeing executive action. The National Council of Provinces, the NCOP, in particular, which is the House of Parliament that provides for the intersection of the national, provincial, and local sphere of government, should pay careful attention to the manner in which the different spheres of government perform their work. As a starting point, the Constitution obliges all spheres of government to observe and adhere to the principle of cooperative government and intergovernmental relations. It states that, amongst other things, the sphere of government must coordinate their actions and legislation with one another and adhere to agreed upon procedures. This is the broad lens through which we must interrogate the information we are to receive today. The design and role of the NCOP places it in a strategic position to be able to carry out its clear and distinct mandate. Its mandate is to represent the provinces in order to ensure that provincial interests are taken into account in the national sphere of government. The House is also charged with the task of making sure that through organized local government, space is provided for the participation of local government representatives in its proceedings. The responsibility of these part-time representatives that are designed by organized local government and who sit in the NCOP is to represent the different categories of municipalities. Program Director, as I've tried to illustrate, the COVID-19 pandemic has had a devastating impact on the economy. Experts, including those from the World Bank, are forecasting that the global economy will shrink by more than 5% this year. They say this would represent the deepest recession since the Second World War. We need to make sure that the interventions that we make on behalf of the people deliver the intended results. As I have said in the previous ministerial briefing on small business development, we should use this crisis to reconstruct our economy with a view to accelerate inclusive growth in order to address unemployment and poverty. It is with this in mind that we're looking forward to the joint hybrid sitting of Parliament called for by the President of the Republic of South Africa for this Thursday to outline South Africa's economic reconstruction and recovery plan. In conclusion, Program Director, allow me to quote from the NDP, quote, "We all see to it and assist so that all life's enablers are available in a humane way," close quote. With these few words, it is my pleasure to open today's ministerial briefing session. I welcome everybody and invite you to participate freely. Thank you very much. Having done that, we will now proceed to a presentation and an input by Honorable Ting Ngesi, Minister of Employment and Labor. Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson, Deputy Chairperson, and the chairs of the NCOP, the honorable members, the Deputy Minister, the DG and senior management of the department, the UIF and Compensation Fund, the members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for this opportunity. I take very seriously these engagements with the Parliament when you hold the executive and officials to account. It is one of the cornerstones of our democracy. The NCOP has asked to be briefed on the Department of Employment and Labor's response to the pandemic and the consequent lockdown, in particular the steps taken to mitigate the impact of the pandemic on employment and labor. You will also want to hear the steps taken to address and remedy the issues raised by the Auditor General's Office in their audit of the UIF, particularly COVID-19 TERS benefit system. I would like to take this opportunity to briefly provide a broad context of the department's response to COVID-19 and the lockdown required to show the spread of the pandemic. Let us start, Chairperson, by casting our minds back 6 months to the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic and the terrible journey we have been through in that relatively short period. A health crisis of unforeseeable and massive proportions, which took the lives of over 17,000 fellow South Africans. Some say it's far more than that, and certainly affected the lives of many and many more. Then the lockdown to slow the progress of the virus, to buy time to ready our response to the health threat, and with it, the economic damage and the impact of the livelihood and the food security. And from the side of the government, the need to move rapidly to put in place wholly new systems to mitigate the impact both of the pandemic and the consequent lockdown and economic fallout. As the Department of Employment and Labor, we were directly involved in the following areas. In regard to the Unemployment Insurance Fund, the UIF, designing and putting in place systems to distribute the COVID-19 TERS benefits completely separate from the traditional UIF benefit system. From the side of the Compensation Fund, changing and putting in place regulations and measures to support the workers infected at the workplace. And the Inspection and Enforcement Services branch, the Labor Inspectorate, developing numerous regulations and directives to keep the workplaces safe during the pandemic, and especially in relation to the gradual return to work, inspecting workplaces and enforcing existing health and safety regulations, as well as the new COVID-19 regulations. I believe it is important to acknowledge the role of the Labor Health and Safety Inspectorate on the front line in combating the virus, Also, I need to inform the House that we have recruited an additional 500 health and safety inspectors. A positive takeaway from this is that we will emerge from this difficult period as a department with a much strengthened occupational health and safety inspection and enforcement capacity. During the lockdown levels 5 through 2, up until the 14th of September, nearly 7,000 inspections were carried out, 5,406 in the private sector, 1,434 in the public sector. These inspections took place in every province, every economic sector, and across the private and the public sectors. The level of compliance with health and safety regulation was well below par. 58% compliance in the private sector, and lowly 45% in the public sector. 3,710 non-compliant notices were issued during this period, including 611 prohibition notices, closing entities' operations either wholly or part. This is particularly worrying given the spread of the pandemic. Full disclosure, 4 of those prohibition notices were served on the Department of Labor and Employment premises. So these inspectors are conducted without fear or favor, and none of us can afford to be complacent. And I need to thank the socially responsible employers who do ensure compliance with health and safety regulation, as well as unions and workers who provide tip-offs to our inspectors. By this way, in terms of the ILO guidelines, we would need some 10,000 labor inspectors to fully cover the economically active population of South Africa. So we need all the help we can get from the employers and labor. Let's come to the UIF. In regard to the UIF, the task was to create and deliver the wholly new COVID-19 terrorist benefit scheme to meet the crisis of the pandemic and the lockdown, and to provide the income support to temporarily laid off workers. In this endeavor, process and consensus building was very important. What we achieved was only possible because of the collective acting support of all the social partners at Netleg. Remember, the UIF was faced with massively increasing the volumes of the disbursement. In fact, a 10-fold increase. It was the discussions at Netleg and the agreement to make mass disbursements through the bargaining councils and the employers' payrolls that provided the breakthrough, allowing the COVID benefit to be distributed on this unprecedented scale. This also addressed the problem of the labor centers being overwhelmed by the claims, at the same time compromising social distancing. I also need to point that Netleg and its rapid response task team ensured a united response to all aspects of our response to the pandemic. For example, ensuring there was agreement and buy-in to the new COVID health and safety directives. As the COVID-19 terrorist payments, as of the 9th October, since the beginning of the lockdown, over 49 billion has been or had been dispersed in the benefits in the form of over 11 million payments. These benefits were dispersed across all provinces, roughly in proportion to the demographics and economic activity. As an example, in Gauteng, 23 billion was dispersed in 5 million payments. Northern Cape, 484 million was dispersed in over 1,000 payments. And in all other provinces, they are falling in between. When we're talking about these payments, we're not talking about the actual number of the workers. It's the number of the employers. In fact, it's 5 million payments in Gauteng. At the same time, 7.5 billion was dispersed in 1.3 million payments in the normal UIF benefits. COVID-19 TERS benefits have been paid for a period of 6 months. Millions of laid-off workers and their families received the a much needed lifeline, also keeping companies afloat and injecting cash into the local communities in every corner of the country. There has been very positive feedback from many employers. Mr. Gerard Pappenfuss, who is the CEO of the National Employers Association of South Africa, stated that, and I quote, "The UIF payments to him have been a success despite the challenges they are facing. UIF did the impossible by putting in place systems within weeks. What could have taken years to materialize," close quote. He stated prophetically that the criminals saw the loopholes and took advantage. Let us be clear, Chairperson. The UIF is not some money tree with unlimited resources. So as we repurpose the fund to deliver to the laid-off workers, we also needed to build in the capacity or in the necessary financial controls and ensure the liquidity and the long-term sustainability of the fund itself. I said at the time, we don't start paying out benefits before controls are in place. This led to initial delays and complaints from the employers that the conditions were too onerous, which in turn compromised the UIF controls in the rush to get payments out to the laid-off workers. There was a lot of pressure on us to deal with the payments from both the employer and the employees. I need to flag that from the start, the UIF was wide awake to the risks of fraud with the new COVID benefit system, especially given the large sums involved. That is why the UIF developed a strategy to follow the money and budgeted for a complete audit to account for every cent paid out. We also made this very clear to the employers in our network engagement, as well as the directions that we issued. We said the following: we will support you and your workers, but when this is over, you will be audited. Chairperson, I must reiterate that from the onset, I had instructed the UIF Commissioner and his team not to make any payments until the risk mitigation or measures were in place in order to prevent fraud and corruption. So a good story, despite the many challenges. But then came the AG's report. As you are aware, the report indicated large risks and gaps in UIF systems, allowing fraudulent and illegal payments to take place, as well as overpayments and underpayments. And I need to flag that the risks were in respect of the COVID-19 TERS benefit scheme, not on the normal UIF benefits. This was a failure to put in place basic controls, the AG told us. Ultimately, operational responsibility for ensuring adequate financial controls lies with the top management of the fund. That is why I took the decision to place management on precautionary suspension. We shall take a follow-up action after investigations have been completed. This was the most difficult decision, and there has never been any suggestion that the individuals suspended were themselves corrupt. But from the side of government, we cannot continue to preach the consequence management and accountability. And then when something like this happens, we do nothing. The department and the acting management of the UIF has taken the necessary steps to address the AG's findings and recommendations. And we have made great progress. Excuse me. Cheers. We have made great progress addressing the main findings of the AG regarding verification of ID numbers and banking details. This has been largely implemented with the cooperation of the banks and other government departments. This is a problem that originates in part from the silo mentality of government, where each department maintains its own database and there is no cross-referencing. This is the fertile territory for double dipping. This has been addressed on a bilateral basis with the relevant department. The challenge we experience has also fueled a serious conversation in government about how we better align and link the database and systems across government. The process of overhauling the SCM processes of the UIF is also underway. That is the summary of the UIF's response to the AG's findings. And upon receipt of the first Auditor General's report or Auditor General's audit, we report the following actions which were taken. All affected identity document numbers were immediately blocked on the system for any further payment. Detailed root cause analysis was performed on all findings, and the control-driven action plan was developed to address those root causes. On the 4th of September, all COVID tariff payments were put on hold in order to implement adequate controls and mitigate the identified risks. The following controls were implemented. Requested sharing of data with the South African with the South African Social Security, Home Affairs, Correctional Services, National Student Financial Aid Scheme, and South African National Defence Force. Systems control implemented included the verification of salaries submitted, blocking all UIF employees' ID numbers from applying, developing a system rule for benefit amount threshold block, and to produce daily error reports. Implemented the bank verification. We implemented, sorry, there's a problem. There's a problem. Come and help me for this thing. Do you hear me, Chairperson?
We have full confidence in the minister solving the problem. So we'll call upon the minister to proceed.
Okay. I will proceed, Chair, if you hear me, but they are still fixing the video.
Please proceed.
We implemented the bank verification for companies with company registration number and companies and intellectual property commission numbers, as well as identifiers for non-profit organizations, churches, schools, and sole proprietors. UIF entered an agreement with ABSA to coordinate the manual verification processes for non-verifying banks such as the Post Bank. We verified some 5 million COVID TERS applicants' identity document numbers with the Home Affairs. After the above controls were implemented, the UIF requested independent assurance on the effectiveness of the controls from the Risk Management Unit and the internal audit. Risk Management assured the fund that all relevant and recommended controls were fully implemented. The internal audit report indicated all controls were adequately implemented. However, 27% of the controls were partially effective, as the fund is still awaiting data sharing from other state institutions. During the first payment run on the 21st of September 2020, after the suspension of the COVID TERS payments, the following errors were detected and the payment were rejected as part of the new controls. Deceased persons, 193 applications rejected. Government employees, 1,668 applications rejected. Inmates, 2 applications rejected. Invalid IDs, 1,968 applications rejected. So the holes are being plugged. UIF has received the correct master data from the Department of Home Affairs, which is the latest data, so the employee will be paid. The risk of inflated salaries by employers has also been corrected as the UIF now verifies with the latest declared salaries. All underage ID or ID numbers have been blocked on the system. No UIF employees will be paid by the COVID system. Looking forward, the AG South Africa is currently auditing all payments made from April to June 2020, and the above controls were fully implemented only on the 21st of September 2020. So the AG's second report may identify some findings prior to the 21st September 2020. However, the comprehensive audit action plan was submitted to the AG. Let's talk just about other measures which are in hand. They include the following. The Special Investigation Unit is conducting a rapid audit to identify and charge individuals who benefited from illegal payments and to recover the money. In some cases, bank accounts have been frozen and assets seized. People have been charged and arrested. I will return to this to provide the progress report. Of the 3.4 billion of wrongful payments, it has already been recouped, and my thanks to the many honest and responsible employers who returned overpayments, and after realizing a mistake had been made, often the benefits were calculated on the basis of incorrect information. For others who returned overpayments, conscience is a wonderful thing, but it also helps if you know that the Auditor General is looking into some payments and that the SIU will be investigating. As I mentioned earlier, the UIF also commenced in its own program to follow the money, tracking every payment made by the COVID scheme. This process was part of the plan from the onset. I need to mention that as part of this, the President has established the Fusion Center, bringing together all relevant law enforcement agencies with the objective of fast-tracking investigations and prosecutions. Longer term, and in an attempt to proactively address the long-standing underlying systemic problems, the DG, together with the UIF and Compensation Fund, has launched a process to conduct an organizational architecture review for the UIF and the Compensation Fund, including provincial and labor centers. In simple terms, every aspect of the two funds' businesses model, systems, structures, and procedures will be reviewed and, where necessary, re-engineered with the intention of optimizing their effectiveness and service to the clients. Even as we address the immediate issues, the department is looking ahead with a focus of improving security, efficiency, and service to the public. I also need to mention, Chairperson, that the pandemic, the lockdown, and the payment of COVID-19 benefits shone a light on the gaps in our social security safety net, both for the UIF and the Compensation Fund, particularly in relation to the non-standard employment where classic employer-employee does not exist. This is an area which is to be reviewed by NETLEC. On the SIU investigation progress report, I will progress with this investigation in some detail, as it is absolutely incumbent upon us that we account for the monies collected from the workers and their employers. 157 cases were allocated for investigation. These cases fall under the following categories: the employer withholding underpayment or withholding or underpayment employees' benefits, 38 cases. Employer using incorrect UIF reference numbers, 4 cases. Overpayment of the UIF benefits to employers, there's 1 case for now. Individuals claiming blocking companies' claims, 10 cases. Incorrect banking details, 8 cases. Suspected fraudulent claims, 90 cases, which include the following subcategories: ghost employees, work and draw benefits company claiming while it was fully functional during the lockdown. Company claiming for terminated employees, collusion between employer and employee to lodge fraudulent claims, non-compliance of the employers with the UIF Act, 6 cases. 67 cases have been finalized. The findings of these completed cases were as follows. Employers who were holding or underpaying employees' benefits, 16 cases, and the following was observed. 3 employers had paid the employees in full at the time of the investigation. 4 employers refunded the unpaid money to the UIF. 1 was a case of ID numbers not appearing on our systems linked to Home Affairs. 3 employers could not access the systems. 1 complainant did not want to proceed with the investigation. 2 companies withheld employees' benefits. 1 case was referred to the province for further investigation. 1 case was referred for enforcement of the memorandum of agreement with the employers. Also, we had employees using incorrect UIF reference numbers, 3 cases. Overpayment of the UIF benefits to employers, 1 case. The employer used his own formula to calculate the employee benefits instead of that of the UIF. Individuals claims blocking companies claims, 6 cases. 5 employees attempted to lodge individual claims blocking the company claims. 1 employer could not access the system. Incorrect banking details, 2 cases. 1 sub-criminal case opened for further investigation and recovery process, and 1 employer to refund the unpaid money to the UIF. Suspected fraudulent claims, 34 cases. 3 cases had elements of fraud and were referred for further forensic investigation. A few of the cases were work and draws, that is, the company was functioning and also claiming benefits. Some are employees attempting to lodge individual claims blocking the company profile. Employers distributing benefits equally amongst all employees, even those that were not declared and not paid by the fund. Employers had used their own calculation to pay benefits and refunded the difference. And the rest, there was no fraud detected. There was also non-compliance of employers with the UIF Act and 5 cases. So the House will want to know details of the corrective measures that have been taken against those identified in the completed cases. Criminal cases are opened where applicable. Recommendations are made to the operations in most findings for control improvement. There are some 90 cases still pending. The categories are as follows. Employers withholding or underpaying employees, 22 cases outstanding. Employers using incorrect UIF reference, 1. Individuals claiming blocking companies claims, 4. Incorrect banking details, 6. Suspended fraudulent claims, 56, which include the following subcategories. The ghost employees, work and draw, that is company claiming which whilst it's fully working, companies claiming for terminated employees, collusion between the employer and employee to lodge the fraudulent claims, and non-compliance by employers with the UIF Act. We have a case there. The House will want to know if criminal cases have already been opened. 3 cases have been instituted by the complainants. The UIF has instituted 75 criminal cases. 11 people have been arrested, 10 have been already appeared before the courts. As for whether the officials in the UIF may have added illegal actions at this stage, all I can say is that investigations are in progress. Let me conclude this section of the UIF and COVID tests by repeating the closure dates which have been widely advertised. We've realized that there were people who were left behind, who didn't have access to the technology, who didn't also, because our labor centers sometimes were operating under difficult conditions. And it has been difficult because even the workers could not come in full. Some of the labor centers were closed at some stage. But we have realized that there are those people who are left behind, and we must give them a chance. Applications for March 2020 to end May 2020 closed on the 25th September 2020. Applications for June 2020 shall close on 15 October 2020. And applications for July to 15 September 2020 shall close on the 30th October 2020. Let me come to the compensation fund. By the way, Chairperson, all these dates were agreed amongst the social partners, business, labor, and community together with government at NetLab. On the compensation fund, the fund has, as of the 28th September 2020, received a total of 7,966 COVID-19 claims with respect to COIDA. Interestingly, 57% of the claims were from the females and 43 from the males. An amount of just over 5 billion has since been paid towards the benefits. From the total of 7,966 claims received, over half have already been adjudicated. The others, for various reasons, incomplete information and so on, not yet adjudicated. The work of the compensation fund comes in the wake of the improved controls and systems that the Unemployment Insurance Fund has instituted, resulting in better vetting of claims and claimants. So it's important to make the point that lessons learned by the UAF are being implemented in the compensation fund. Thank you very much again, Chairperson, for this particular opportunity.
Very much, Minister. We will now proceed to comments and observations by honorable members and delegates. Are there any comments? There's Muimang on my left, and there's Boshoff. Let's start this side first. They're just the two hands. Muimang and Boshoff.
Allow me to start by appreciating the excellent work done by the ANC-led government by initiating a multidisciplinary team to audit COVID-19, a temporary employee relief scheme transaction, and also appreciating billions of money that has been set aside and paid out to millions of, to thousands of our workers. Chair, I have 4 questions that I want to put to the Honorable Minister. The first one is, what are the lessons that the department has learned from the mass distribution of the UIF, through employers, particularly given the fact that the period and the time pressure that the department had to respond to the pandemic placed tremendous amount of stress on the department. The second one, Chair, relates to, are there any changes of systems that are being considered by the UIF and the department based on the relationship that have been established with various stakeholders? Amongst them is the relationship that the department has put in place with the Department of Home Affairs, particularly to detect those fraudsters that were allegedly using the deceased people to defraud the UIF. and also SASSA and social development, because there are people that were double dipping from other grant system, and also those students that were also the beneficiary of NSFAS, but at the same time were also double dipping, but also the Department of Correctional Services, because there are prisoners that were also accessing this, of course, mindful of the different conditions that could be applying to these departments. The third one, Chair, relates to what steps have been taken or have been taken against business who might have underdeclared their workers and therefore could not claim from the UIF CARES fund for these workers, but also the challenges that might have emanated from the payment that have been transacted given the review of workers that were not initially registered. The fourth one and the last one, Chair, relates to what is the readiness of the UIF and also its liquidity position, given the fact that emerging from this pandemic, devastating impact in terms of employment figures, as depicted by Stats SA, to the effect that we have lost close to 2.2 million workers. The question that I want to pose is: will UIF from its normal payment be able to absorb and pay out thousands of workers that are going to be retrenched following the impact of this pandemic on employment and those workers that might have lost their employment jobs? Thank you, Chair.
No, thank you very much, Boshoff.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just a point of clarity, how many questions are we allowed to ask? Do you have to ask all your questions now, or is there another round?
We need to be fairly reasonable, and for now, I'm leaving that to your discretion. But we should know that we don't have the whole day. So try to censor yourself.
Thank you very much. So we can ask more than one. To the Minister, thank you very much for your input. Nothing has actually changed since we had our session with you last week. Minister, the minimum wage expresses absolute hypocrisy in that the Act exempts members of the SANDF, NIA and the Secret Service, but enforces employers in the private sector to pay the minimum wage. As the Minister of Labour and Employment, will you please enlighten us in this House and the broader public on how the government has a different set of rules than that of those in the private sector? My second question is in regard to the compensation fund. The compensation fund, which has a long and undistinguished history of inefficiency, maladministration, and financial mismanagement, buckled under the weight of claims and failed miserably to process and pay claims. The new electronic system called CompEasy, which was migrated to in October last year, has been serially dysfunctional, placing a huge strain on employees injured whilst on duty. Minister, furthermore, the compensation funds delays in paying valid claims and rejecting claims unfairly have been described by a High Court judge as, I quote, a textbook example of an abuse of the court's process, close quote. The question, Minister, is this not yet another failure in the stress testing of your department brought on by the COVID-19 crisis? And will you today acknowledge your failures, act honourably, and follow your Commissioner into early retirement? My last question, Honourable Chair. is a solution for unemployment. Honorable Chair, Vladimir Lenin is famously quoted as saying, open quote, "There are decades where nothing happens and weeks where decades happen," close quote. This Honourable Minister is exactly what has happened in South Africa, with more than 2 million South Africans having lost their jobs in the second quarter, bringing into sharp focus the devastating economic blow of one of the harshest COVID-19 lockdowns in the world, with a number of jobless people, according to Stats South Africa, standing at 14.1 million, a rate of 42%, which is an all-time high record. Minister, you and I both know that these job losses will never be reversed. And when it comes to the economic growth, the situation is dire as the economy slowed by 16.4% in the second quarter of this year. Minister, can you today unequivocally put South Africans at ease by sharing with them the steps your department has taken to curb this devastating unemployment crisis, and whether you have had any discussions with the President on how to address these job losses? If so, what are the details? As Minister, it is not only lives, but livelihoods that are at stake. Thank you very much, Chair.
Yes. Thank you very much. Mama Rekhane, your hand was up. Yeah.
Thanks, Chairperson. Honorable Minister, let me welcome your progressive information input that you have made to us. My question is, similarly, it was reported that mistakes entered onto the system could not be corrected. Many people could not claim because they were unable to correct mistakes. How was this matter remedied? And my second question is, how is the automation of the application value chain likely to influence the work processes in the department going forward? Will it not have an impact on the jobs of workers who have been performing this task before? Would it not help to relieve the queues at the labor centers if more work is automated or web-based? Thank you, Chairperson.
Honorable Shaik, I thought your hand was up at some point. Shaik will be followed by Raida.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Honorable Chair, I have two questions. The one is in relation to the fact that some workers had complained that the UIF hotline had been disappointing and the experience generally frustrating. Minister, what I'd like to know is how was the repurposing of the UIF progress since the beginning of the payment of the special COVID-19 temporary emergency relief scheme benefits? And my second question, Minister, notwithstanding the fact that the Auditor General had raised issues, but the department embarked on a follow the money approach to ensure that there were control mechanisms to identify the potential fraud cases. And I'd like to know how effective was the follow the money approach? Thank you, Chairperson.
Okay, Raida.
Thank you very much.
Please proceed, Raida.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Thank you, Minister. Nice to see you again. Minister, we were initially told that 40 billion rand had been set aside until the end of June 2020 in order to handle the claims resulting from the lockdown. and the lockdown was then extended to August 20 and further extended. We know that the UIF is sitting on a total portfolio of about 135 billion rand, of which half lies in government bonds. President Ramaphosa also said that a further 100 billion would be set aside for the protection of jobs and to create jobs. Minister, can you tell us how much is currently available to the UIF fund in the pot, and how long will that sustain the country, given the latest and the projected unemployment figures, and bearing in mind the current rate of claims as a result of the lockdown? Chair, thank you. My second question is that the Auditor General alluded to the fact that the Minister and his department were quite reluctant to take up an offer of assistance from the private sector. The entity described in the media was called Business for South Africa, which offered free administrative assistance with the distribution and payments for TERS and UIF funds. NUMSA also alluded to this and said that the relief scheme has been woefully inadequate. Now, the President has been on TV several times telling South Africans that we all need to work together. The President also said that government and private sector must work together to ensure that those who have lost their jobs will have a lifeline to keep them going under a very unstable economic climate. So, considering that, Minister, the question that begs to be answered is, why was the offer of assistance from the private sector not taken up? Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. Let's now take a hand from the screen. Honorable Baby. Please unmute.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, Chairperson, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Chairperson. Greetings to all my colleagues, especially special delegates from KZN. Thanks for the detailed presentation, Honorable Minister. My question will be, what is the role of the Fusion Center in the investigation? Which means how many officials have been arrested and charged with fraud? Sorry, and again, how long is the duration of the suspension of the UIF Commissioner, Chief Financial Commissioner Officer, Chief Operating Officer, and also Head of Supply Management? Is it going to continue until November 2020? When is AGSA will complete its final special audit report? Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Honorable Baby. Arnold. Honorable Arnold.
Thank you, Chairperson. And greetings also to the Minister and then to all the NCOP delegates, and thank you. Chairperson, the Minister of Unemployment and Joblessness says that they have identified risk and gaps in their systems. And I think this is unacceptable because we know that your internal controls has failed before COVID-19. But let me get to my question here. The country went into a lockdown at midnight on the 26th of March after a national state of disaster was declared to curb the spread of COVID-19. The devastating consequences of the lockdown has been the closure of businesses that were deemed non-essential, which had a direct impact on employees' ability to earn an income. Many companies did not comply with the conditions and regulations of lockdown with regard to fraudulent essential certificates. So I want to know what actions has been taken against these employees and what kind of interventions were implemented to strengthen the capacity of your labor inspectorate. So you have mentioned there was an additional 500, but we haven't seen, and also community members and then employees complaining that they didn't even see those inspectors at workplaces. Now, during oversight visits, and especially here in the Western Cape, we have seen that your own department didn't comply in terms of social distancing and queuing. So we need to find out now what actions is also there for them, because they are supposed to be the first in terms of complying with the lockdown regulations in terms of social distancing. IT system, normally when we also visited those labor offices, IT system failures, and then workers have to come back again, standing in queues, and then they have to come back in terms of your capacity constraints and everything. That was very frustrated now for workers that has already gone through the process of losing their jobs now. Then, Chairperson, the COVID-19 crisis and the national lockdown has had a devastating impact on South Africa's 1 million domestic workers. The COVID-19 pandemic has put a spotlight on just how devastating the effects of the lack of enforcement of labor legislation in the domestic worker sector are. Many were dismissed or laid off on account of the lockdown, while others have had their working hours significantly reduced. Not enough has been done to give proper sustenance to domestic workers and farm workers. So can the minister also just give us a breakdown, or he can send it to us, a breakdown in terms of claim benefits for domestic workers per province. That is for now, Chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I just take this opportunity, please allow me to do so, honorable members, and welcome Honorable Nkosi, who has joined us. And this is a first participation in a hybrid and sitting with the NCOP. Yeah. There she is. Thank you very much. Let's move on to Matebula. Honorable Matebula, to be followed by Okam, followed by Nchabeling, Landsman, Bartlett, and the two here.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll see. We'll come.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Matebula, yeah.
Thank you very much, Chair. My question to the Minister, I would like to know whether his department has made any effort to assist foreign nationals who work in South Africa to apply for the COVID-19 relief funding, and if so, how many have the departments have assisted so far? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Nana?
Thank you very much.
Even the fact that there's so much interest on the matter and everybody wants to have his or her say, can I make a request that you really start with the most important point? So when I cut you, given the scarcity of time, you shall have had your say. Nana?
You can be assured, I'm not intending to read a thesis. Honorable Minister, as you probably know, that provinces such as the Eastern Cape, who are predominantly rural, do rely on tourism as part of job creation strategies. But with COVID and subsequent hard lockdown, an untold harm has been caused to the Eastern Cape's game farmers whose business really relies on overseas tourists and overseas hunters. These farmers and farm workers, Minister, have lost a season, and this has led to the total collapse of the industry. So my question would be, the country has been shocked to hear that the abrupt suspension of UIF and terrorist fund payouts. I'm sorry. Minister, the country was shocked to hear of the abrupt suspension of UIF and terrorist payouts, and then the subsequent resumption thereof, whilst this has exposed a lack of adequate communication by yourself to the public, caused a great confusion and anxiety. Furthermore, considering the severe impact of the suspension, and given that the country is currently under level 1 of lockdown, will you consider extending TERSA and UIF payouts until December 2020, and whether normal benefits such as maternity and unemployment benefits, which have taken a backseat, will also now be prioritized, as this is another important component of unemployed workers that need your department's attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Let me also appreciate the presentation by the Minister. The first question, Chair, that I would like to ask is on the issue of the AG, Chairperson. The AG's report, the first report released in September, observed the following. Payments were not made to applicants below the legal age of employment. Payments were made to applicants with identity numbers matching those of UIF employees. Some deceased individuals were paid TERS benefits. What then I would like to ask from the Minister, because those issues were raised by the Auditor General, how has the department implemented the recommendation of the AG, and how to improve the data analysis to mitigate these system weaknesses? The second one, Chair, the AG has also reviewed the appointment of service providers to create awareness of the UIF COVID-19 TERS initiative, and noted again the following: non-compliance with the instruction notes, unfair awareness of contracts, discrepancies in the appointment of service providers. And again, there were some recommendations from the AG. What I would like to know this time is that how did the department go about to implement those? I'm raising this question, Chair, because always the Auditor General will give the recommendations and they will be ignored. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Minister, about the information you have given us. I just only have two questions. The question one is, the claims are submitted to the comp easy system was a relatively low figure. How was it determined whether illness has been caused at the workplace or in the community of the employee? The second one, regarding the problem of employees who were found to be positive, was it compulsory to report the diagnosis to employees? It was a moral dilemma. How has the compensation fund ensured there was no abuse of the system for claiming occupational injuries, given the situation of the closure of the offices? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Madam Chabele.
Thanks, Chairperson. And let me take this opportunity also to welcome the presentation done by the war veteran, Honorable Nesi. He survived war against COVID. he fought and won. And we're hoping that with that courage of fighting such a deadly disease, he'll be able to fight everything that will, to make sure that the department does what it is supposed to do. I just want to know from the good minister, the war veteran, what has been done about the employers who had forced their workers to use their annual leave rather than paying them during the lockdown? Has the department been tracking the spread of infections at workplaces with essential workers? Have we done that? And what will be the impacts, of that? Of course, you have given that in the report as you were briefing us. My second question is, what has been the impact of the, what has been the impact of the easing of the lockdown regulations on the workplace infections and claims processed by the compensation fund? In your briefing, actually, Chairperson, the minister, you have answered some of the questions that I had in my mind even before they were asked. And I just want to check, what has been the helpfulness, if we are implementing that, of the Public Employment Services Act, and what has this temporary, even including the labor brokers, what had been their impact, of their services on workers who, were those people who were temporary workers, were they paid for were they compensated for the days that they were not working? Those are some of the things that we'd like to know, Chairperson, and I thank you. Even before that, the labor inspectors, Chairperson, the shops, there are people who run shops in our townships and villages, and there is no consideration for health for those people who buy from their shop. People sleep in their shops, they sleep on bags of meal, I hear, we are told. And that definitely cannot be healthy. And how will that, how has this inspections improved on the health and safety of our people, particularly in the small business in the townships and villages? And thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Landsman.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to ask the Honorable Minister a question about the ordinary citizens. What I wanted to check is that how has the department deal with processing of ordinary benefits of UIF and compensation fund that were claimed during the lockdown period? Because we know the huge amount and the volume, has COVID-19 not affect the claims and system based on IT and all those things? Thank you.
Honorable Bartlett.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much, Chair. I have two questions, Honorable Chairperson, and good morning to my colleagues and the Chairperson. The first question is the UIF had paid 140 million rand to 35 applicants. They received benefits from other state institutions, including government employees, who had been paid 41 million rand to the personnel system. How will government ensure that this money is recovered? And then my second question, Honorable Chair, 30 million rand was paid to people with invalid identification numbers. Why was the state unable to identify who were the citizens and what are the implications of this breach in terms of security of government systems? Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much. Honorable Christian.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and thank you to the Minister for the brief. My question is around the shortcomings in the information technology system, as we've also heard the previous speaker mention such discrepancies. Minister, what measures, if any, were taken by yourself and your department to engage with the State Information Technology Agency, SETA, to ensure that the UIF TERS information technology systems dealing with claim disbursements were insulated against fraud and corruption abuse by employees and employers? Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. Honorable Oka.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Honorable Minister, just a few days ago, a bit more than a week, we learned about the terrible murder of a farm worker, Mr. Brendan Horner. What are your department doing to ensure the safety of our farmers and our farm workers, all their employees on the farms in South Africa? They are being attacked left, right, and center in this country at this moment. We cannot let it be that we stand by idling on this. I would like to know what your department will do in order to protect the farmers and farm workers in our country that falls under your department. Then furthermore, Honourable Minister, as a former unionist, what are you going to do to work with unions and businesses to install calm and understanding amongst their members and to minimize the opportunity of labour unrest, given that you will shortly be entering into new wage agreements? Will you also ensure that employees have the opportunity to express their views through a secret ballot? Or do you agree that the current practice of intimidation by union leaders is an acceptable norm and which is totally undemocratic? Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. According to information, Minister, the UIF to date has received just over 1,104,000 applications for the payment of COVID-19 and TERS benefit, and have paid 825,840 of these applicants. These payments equate to just under 42 billion rand, which has been distributed to 9,501,865 payments to workers around the country. Minister, many applicants are still in the dark as to why their payments were either rejected or simply not handled. Employers were told very boldly that the TERS UIF fund has a 10-day turnaround time, but alas, this was not to be. We cannot see another bomb explode around the UIF TERS funds, Minister. Can you please inform this House today whether the debris from the April 2020 non-payments have been cleaned up or not? And if not, why not and by when will it be cleaned up? Thank you.
Honorable Dodovo.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Masondo. I have two specific questions to the Minister. The first one relates to the TERS payments. Some companies claim that when they received the TERS payments, there was no payment advice. So they were not sure on how to disburse the money between the employees, especially where the disbursements were under the total amount requested. Now, my question is, how did SARS assist in the processing and the payment of the COVID-19 TERS benefit to the employees, and how this situation was remedied? My second quick one, Chair, relates to the compensation fund, in which I want to understand what is it that the department did to remedy the challenges that were experienced by the system while it was handling this particular matter, because during the COVID-19 COVID-19, there was relatively high volume of applications and how the department went about to remedy this situation. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair.
Thank you very much. Honorable Mfaela.
Yes, Nyambos, Honorable Chairperson. Allow me to greet Honorable Minister and our honorable members. Chairperson, I just want to firstly to allow me to say, Minister, your department through this period of pandemic from March to up to now have experienced a lot of challenges and problems. That is according to your presentation. Now, I just want to know from you, Minister, that what kind of advice or clarion call that you can give to companies, small and big, private and public. What kind of shortcoming or shortfall that we have, that your department experienced through this period from March up to now, that you won't like to see it happening again, because I think, Chairperson, Minister, this pandemic is look like it's going to be with us for some time, and it's nice to see how kind of advice the minister can give to departments, to companies to avoid problems that were happening from March up to now. I thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. This then brings us to the end of the questions, issues raised by honorable members and delegates. We'll now revert back to the Minister for responses. Honorable Minister.
Thank you. Chairperson, whilst questions were being asked, I missed Honorable Ryder's question because there was a disruption in my system. I'm not sure whether that question will be related to me or you would allow him to come again on that question. I just missed because of the system. You could see that.
What I can do is to ask Honorable Ryder just to repeat the question again. Yes, there are questions around the claims and the bonds and Auditor General. Please repeat that succinctly, very briefly.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for the second chance, Minister. Initially, we were told that 40 billion had been set aside until the end of June 2020 to handle claims resulting from lockdowns. We also know that the UIF is sitting on a total portfolio of around 135 billion rand, half of which lies in government bonds. President Ramaphosa also said that 100 billion would be set aside for the protection of jobs and to create jobs. Minister, I asked you to tell this House today how much is currently available in the UIF pot and how long will that sustain the country, given the latest and the projected unemployment figures, bearing in mind the rate of claims as a result of the lockdown. The second part of my question, Minister, related to the Auditor General's comments that said that you and your department were reluctant to take up the offer made by business, for example, Business for South Africa, who offered free administrative assistance with the distribution and payments of TERS and UIF funds. Minister, the President's been on TV saying that South Africans need to work together. The President has said that government and the private sector must work together to ensure that those who've lost their jobs will have a lifeline to keep them going under this very unstable economic climate. So therefore, Minister, it begs the question, why was the offer from the private sector for administrative assistance not taken up? Thank you for the chance, Chair.
Minister.
Thank you, Chairperson. Quite a number of questions. the lessons which were learned in the process. It's very clear that the lesson is that we need to keep on updating our system, and that's the process I was talking about, to say the DG has started to look at the architecture of the two funds, look at the business model, look at the systems, look at the very structure, and look at the skills. I think that's what we have learned on that. But also, I think the most important part is the issue of integration of systems with other departments. I've been talking to my colleagues who are also running in social security, to that we need to come together and quickly deal with this issue of integration. And we have also said we are going to enter into, in terms of the changes in system, we're going to enter into MOUs or MOAs with other departments so that we're able to get live data. For instance, people die on a daily basis. Today's numbers might not be yesterday's numbers. So we're part of that initiative of government to talk about an integrated data forum. And where business did not apply, we allowed employees to submit applications. We allowed them to do it themselves, and payments were done directly into their own bank account. I think this was one of the biggest problems which we faced. We didn't want to do that. We had not planned to do that because we knew that we'll deal with millions, but it was better to deal with those millions through the organized bargaining councils. It was easy to deal with that with the employer associations, and that was the original arrangement. But we had to change when a number of employees were complaining about this. And I want to say, those who are also very angry at government must also show that anger against some of the employers who were the cause of this deliberately, for that matter. The UIF reserves, the UIF reserves at the moment, we've talked about 40 billion or plus, but we're very clear that we're talking about 50 billion available. But the question which we need to answer, and I think the question we have to answer is, what is the way forward when we have to deal with mass employment, when we have, because everybody has predicted this issue of the retrenchment. So that's a very, very serious matter which we're going to be looking at. And it's the biggest debate which the board has been taking, the board of the UIF, which we also have been taking together with the actuaries as to what is the way forward. It's very difficult at this stage to even be exact about the numbers who are going to be facing a retrenchment and how are we going to be dealing with the normal tests. But if the worst comes to the worst, we might see ourselves in the 2008 situation where we have to appeal to government. But at this stage, it's something which we are engaging with, looking at the figures. Well, mistakes can be corrected online. They can be corrected online. But also, one of the problems, our labor centers were not operating properly. Now that we are at level 1, we think that our capacity has improved to above 75%, although not yet at 100%. Yeah. So people will be able to come in and deal with those issues. The call center, we appealed to a number of people who could help. And then we got about 500 agents from Harambee. And who were administering this particular call center. There were improvements, but we should not lie. Given the scale of the problem, when I visited that particular call center, I was shown about 300 to 400 people who would be on the waiting list whenever others were answering about 100 calls and so on. So there was very, very big pressure during that time of COVID. Hence, then there were also problems. But we think that that has improved now. The follow the money, it's a process we have just started because we've had to appoint forensic auditors. And even that process, we had to be meticulous. We don't repeat the mistakes, which some of the mistakes were highlighted in terms of the procurement processes. We've just started that particular process, but some of the processes had been started, and I can tell you that some of the people whom were able to identify the irregularities were done by the department even before the AG could pick up those. And we started dealing with those issues. So the details will be available at the right time as to how many, and we think that this process is going to take a very long period. However, to facilitate that particular period, we have not just appointed one service provider in terms of doing this process. We have appointed about 8 to 9 companies, I just want to be exact, who are going to be helping us on this. The capacity of the labor inspectorate, as I've said, we have added 500 OHS inspectorate. And we think that this is going to help in terms of the capacity. And even what I said before, it did talk about this matter. And the big issue which I raised about the non-compliance from the side of government was the issue of the health and safety committees, because every employer is expected to have health and safety committees which must be functioning. So some had interim structures. They didn't have self and those particular working committees, health and safety committees. The issue of the domestic, I can confirm that we have about 35,000 foreign workers. In fact, to be exact, it's 35,851 who were paid. That is the employers who were paid, claiming on behalf of the foreign workers, and representing about 419,708 foreign workers. And the amount was 1.6 billion. So foreign workers were paid where the documentation was very clear. The domestics, 20,992 employers were paid, and representing about 60,000 employees. This is about 214,000 rands. So if there are those who are outstanding foreign workers, once we have received all the passport details and their status with the Home Affairs, who will be able to pay that. But if they are illegal, then it becomes another game, because we'll be doing something illegal ourselves. The harm which has been caused in the Eastern Cape game farmers, those workers do qualify for the terrorist benefits. And we did communicate even through the social media and the various media that the employers should be able to claim on behalf of their employees. Unfortunately, some of the employers do not cooperate. And it's very quick for them to run into the media instead of using the channels which are there. And some of them deliberately deny the workers this particular right and say, go and claim on your own to the government. Whereas if they do it, it would be easy for us to do that. That is why then our labor centers are open. Workers can be able now to walk in and deal with those claims. The payments which were made to the children, while our systems were updated, we're no more going to deal with that, but we're going to follow those cases and see what has been happening, were those children used by some people or what. We are following up those cases, and the UIF is also helping us. Or was it a collusion between those employers and some people inside? They are looking into all those issues, and we are dealing with updating our policies and putting all the necessary issues which have to be put in place in order to deal with that. Impact of the labor brokers and the temporary workers. The temporary workers have a right. They have a right. All the workers have a right. Let me even tell you about the other question which was not asked here. We had to take a decision at Netlek after discussion with the social partners that whether the employers were paying or not paying the UIF to the UIF fund, we had to take a decision that it was not a mistake of the workers. And given the scale of this particular pandemic, we had to pay those workers. That was a very difficult decision taken at Netlek to say we must pay. And it was by all social partners, including labor, business, and the community. And we had to comply. And that's where major problems came from. Major problems are associated with us paying every worker and depending on the information, on the data which had been supplied by the employers. Our inspection is collaborating with the health and safety, with the health department. And we've been able to close some of the workplaces where there was no compliance. But we must accept one thing, Chairperson. You're talking about more than 2 million workplaces in South Africa. And we're talking about those who are registered. Some have not registered. And you're talking about inspection, which is not even more than 1,000. The reality is we cannot be able to reach all the workplaces. In fact, we reach a very, very small percentage of the workplaces. We rely on the honest employers and active shop stewards on the factory floor. That's what we are relying on. That's why we're dealing with some of the issues at the level of Netlek. Even when our inspectors visit some of these areas, in some instances, it's some shop stewards who tip us and we have to go there. So inspectors alone are not going to be able to deal with these issues. It's going to be a cooperation of the employers and also the union. The payment to the civil servants, we are following the money. We are recovering that, and that one, it's a plain criminal act if we discover that, unless they show that whatever they will be able to show. Invalid IDs, we have told you that we have already stopped that particular system, and we take it as fraud. And we take it that there must have been some form of the collusion. And the follow the money is going to be able to help us in dealing with this. SITA UIF, SITA does provide infrastructure and network services. And but we have decided to also go on our own software and develop our own software. And the huge number of the transactions were caused by some of the loopholes, which we have been able to identify as we were improving our systems. The other question is the payments which have not been which have not been followed or which have not been done. Well, all applications that are inside us, within our systems, and we've communicated this, and we've done it through the various ways, emails to individuals, social media. If there is anybody who has not been paid, but their claims are in, that's why I was giving those dates. Maybe I will have to give you the dates again, because we were trying to obviate this particular problem, which you were talking about. That's why we have extended that, so that we are able to pay these claims. But we can't continue with the applications indefinitely. We can't do that. But all those which have been put in place will be able, if people can be able to show, even if their applications were not proper, that they were in by a particular date, we will be able to process those particular claims. But remember now, we have to move very carefully. We have to be meticulous, given a number of issues which were raised by the AG. And all the disbursements of the test benefit, it's on the systems, it's detailed per the ID and the ID which has claimed. And the employers must use the UIF reference number to check this. And then what we have already paid, maybe let me talk about the compensation fund related questions. The system of the UIF is not dysfunctional. I mean, of the compensation fund, I'm sorry. The claims, we've been able to deal with them. And I think about 95,000 of those claims, and we're talking in the normal claims, have been able to be dealt with. And we've processed about 309 medical invoices, which we've received. And it doesn't mean that if those have been submitted to us, it's automatic payment. We have paid about 200,747 of those submitted to us. And 25,694 were rejected. And the 67,000 are still under processing, because we can't just pay. We can't just pay. But what has been paid from April this year, it's 1.5 billion. Those are medical claims, 50 million in compensation benefits, and 590 million in pension. But we must emphasize here, there's a big cry from some of the businesses, because we refused this issue, and the commission refused this issue of the middleman, because that's where people have been shortchanging us, some of the companies, using the middle people in order to get more funds and even charge their commission and whatever. I must say, we published to give this information about the compensation fund, together with the directive and the exposure questions, which had to be completed by the employer and the affected workers. We were able to publish that openly. And a panel was made up of the medical doctors who were sitting together with the medical reports in order to determine whether these were genuine or not genuine. And the systems of the compensation funds, I must emphasize, they are available online as we speak. But I must also say, the compensation fund has also created some email address that were included in the directive, where the employers can be able to email in order to submit the claims. I did say this, why we rejected some of the claims. When we introduced ComEasy system, we said we will be introducing better controls to ensure we pay the correct claims to the correct claimants. I think ComEasy system has been able to prevent some of the problems which we were facing. That's why people feel that it's tough and it's necessary that we do that. All the invoices that are rejected, they are rejected for valid reasons. And this is an indication that the controls we introduced are working. Sometimes you find that the claim does not exist, and a procedure being which is required and pre-authorization is required, there is even no proof of pre-authorization because there are systems which have to be followed. And the invoice is also not compliant to what we call clinical rules in the system. And medical reports that support the claims have not been submitted. These are all the issues which we have been dealing with. I might have missed other questions, Chairperson, but we will look at what has been recorded and come back to give maybe written responses on some of the questions we might have missed. But we won't say about the comments which other members have raised. It's their views on the other issues. But this is what I would say in relation to the questions.
Minister Boshoff.
Sorry, it's hearing aids and glasses and everything. Honourable Chair, that is totally unacceptable because the Minister knew he was coming to a briefing where questions were going to be asked. And it is only acceptable from his side to have made note of all the questions, to answer them, because there are very pertinent questions that were posed to him, and the public out there needs his answers. So it is not acceptable for us, and we request the Minister to please ask which questions he did not hear properly, then we'll repeat it like he did with Honourable Ryder. And we cannot go into sessions like this and a minister getting away by not answering questions.
Okay. No, I think for now we should leave it at that. That the minister, members had an opportunity to raise comments and questions and make their own observation on this or that. And the minister was then given an opportunity to respond to these issues. For this first part, I think we should leave it at that whatever responses were provided, there's an opportunity for members to follow up on some of these matters, and that can be done after the provinces have made whatever contributions they will make. I will now
Chairperson,
Honorable,
I raise a point of order, please.
yeah, what's the point of order?
Thank you, Chairperson. The point of order is that I want to follow up on Honourable Bosho's point of order that she raised. This is not the first session that we have where the Minister comes to do a presentation and where we ask questions. Ministers know that already. May I request and propose that the questions that the Minister did not hear, that all the members that knows that the questions were not dealt with by the Minister can put that into writing, not on the 3 questions per week system, but due to the fact that it couldn't be answered in this meeting, put it in writing and ask the Minister to answer that in writing. Thank you.
Yeah. Members, I think we should just keep in mind the fact that when the Minister responds, he responds to the best of his ability, if I may put it like that, and provides information. That's all we can do. We can't say the Minister should have answered the question this or the other way, because there's no other way. There's no standard other way. It's very, very important, though, that the ministers and all the responsible people who have an opportunity to appear in front of the House apply themselves. That's the best we can say. In fact, the discussion that we're having now is a non-discussion. It shouldn't happen. Because it's either you raise a point of order and you clearly state what that is, and we deal with that, or you know, we look forward to really ensuring a deeper engagement with the ministers in any other session. Yes.
Thank you very much, Chair. It has cost the taxpayer quite a bit of money to get us down to Parliament today, to have this first hybrid session in the NCOP. As my Honourable Chief Whip said, and that's Labuskaghni, not Muhai, the Minister knew that he was going to be asked questions today. And in his introductory remarks, he spoke about accountability. Now, where is his accountability if he decides to select questions that he would like to answer? So the difficult questions he's put aside, and the easy questions that are at hand, he's given a reply to. This is totally unacceptable. I'm still waiting for an answer on my first question. I was the second person to speak. So in other words, he was from the start not listening to the questions that were tabled. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honourable members, we'll now move on to the next session. And the next session is session 2. It will be chaired by Honourable Mwima. I now hand over to Honourable Mwima.
Can't hear.
the second session, which will be focusing on the provincial plans to mitigate the impact of COVID-19 pandemic, particularly on the provincial economies and labor, focusing more on employment creation. I think what is critical, honorable members, is to appreciate the fact that in our interaction with the department and also with the unemployment insurance fund, there was an indication in terms of payments and also contributions that the UIF has done to provincial specifics. With regard to Eastern Cape, the payment made by the UIF is 2.3 billion. With regard to Free State is 1.4 billion. With regard to Gauteng, it was 20 billion. With regard to KwaZulu-Natal, 6.5 billion. Limpopo, it was 1.1 billion. Mpumalanga, it was 2.3 billion. Northern Cape, it was 429 million. And Northwest, it was 1.2 billion. So definitely this is an illustration in terms of the excellent and good work that the UIF has done in terms of cushioning the pandemic and the impact on vulnerable employees. And without any waste of time, we will then go straight to invite the Honorable Mvoko from the Eastern Cape to lead the discussion. The time limit for the discussion is 5 minutes. Over to you, Honorable Mvoko.
Yeah, let's just check if he's here. If he's not here, then we can proceed to the next.
Is Honorable Mvoko here? Can we then move to Free State and invite Honorable MEC Mohale to lead the presentation on the interventions around provincial plans? Honorable MEC Mohale.
Thank you very much, Chair. As a province of the Free State, we have also had a plan in order to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic. What we have done, we have, in addition to the national intervention financial packages provided, we have also deployed additional provincial incentives to support the economic recovery and revitalization, particularly for the small businesses, which were mainly based on, one, preserving the existing jobs, secondly, to try and create new job opportunities, particularly as they were to be brought about by the pandemic. The most important is that we have developed the focal sectors upon which the province were deploying its resources. To mention the few, one is that we have focused on the agro-processing, we have focused on the digital economy, we have also focused on other manufacturing and the retail, as well as the automotive and the transport and logistics. What we have done at the level of coordination, we have been working together with the organized business in the province, all of them which are existing here, the chambers of commerce, the Black Business Councils, and all other various ones which are there, so as to ensure that at the level of communication, we are very effective, and also to take their views into the account. But the cornerstone of our plans was the promotion of localization, industrialization, with an understanding that in the processes of industrialization or manufacturing, we should be able to create more jobs as the value-add processes are taking place. But just to run quickly, on the national incentives, we have also had some Free State companies which were assisted under the Tourism Relief Fund to save some jobs in the hospitality. We have had 285 applications and 138 were approved and disbursed. Under the NYDA programs, we have had approval of 98 beneficiaries of the 257 that were applied for. And under the CFA as run by DSBD, we, under the Debt Relief Fund, we have received approval for 42 applications totaling an amount of 11 million. And when coming to the provincial incentives, we have had 4 types of packages that we have given to businesses. One called risk sharing to an amount of 25 million, and the one that is designed for micro and small businesses support to an amount of 28 million, and the one dedicated for spaza shops for about 5 million, and the informal business support to a tune of 3 million, as well as lastly, a grant that was meant for the waste pickers, because during the lockdown, especially level 5 and 4, the waste pickers could not even do anything, and those people were reliant mostly on them picking waste on daily basis. So we have made an amount of about 900,000 in form of the vouchers which we are giving to them. And we have also injected an additional 10 million rands to our development corporation, the FDC, so as to increase their loan book in order to assist those specifically businesses which would have received the orders anywhere else, not only in government, for the bridging finance, so that as and when these SMMEs receive jobs or orders for opportunities, it should be much very easier for them to receive. So sometime in June, we have opened these incentives through the public announcement, and they've taken about a month where we've invited all the Free State businesses to apply. And we have received, at the time of closure on the 9th of July, we have received more than 2,500 applications. To date, under risk sharing scheme, where we had 25 million, we have already disbursed 18 million of the 25, and we are going to disburse the 5 million in the next 2 weeks. And under enterprise incentive scheme, where we have budgeted 28 million, we have disbursed 7 million, and the 20 million will be disbursed before the end of the month. And under the spaza shops, of the 5 million that we have made available, we have disbursed 3.3 million rand, and the remaining 1.6 also will be disbursed before the end of October. And lastly, under the informal enterprise support approvals, we have disbursed 2 million and 694 was already disbursed, reaching about 250 informal businesses, and 2.3 will also be disbursed, as all of them that have been approved will be disbursed by the end of October. So we have also designed specific programs where it would assist particularly those Black people that would want to enter the mainstream economy. There's a program we're running now with Pick and Pay, which will now allow those retailers who might want to graduate in owning the retail stores. So we have set aside 10 million rand, which will be injected to assist the capital requirements. The program, I think, is now under advert. It will close soon. We should have finalized it before the end of the year. We have also, in an endeavor to save the jobs, have brought together all the spaza shops in the province and designed their own distribution channel under the wholesale program. We have provisionally made available 3.1 million, which will help with the initial capital cost. And there's another provincial-owned wholesaler called Cash and Carry, in which will also allow the 10 small businesses to be in that particular wholesale program, which will support with an amount of 2.5. So under this wholesaling program, we have set aside 15.6 million. And lastly, Chair, looking at your time, if I run through the jobs that all of these interventions would have impacted on, in total, the entire programs have a potential to yield 7,118 new jobs, and as well as it has saved 2,394 jobs. And the jobs that were immediately created through this particular program is 4,724. And under the spaza shops and the general dealers, we have saved 711 jobs, and the potential jobs that were to be created is 1,900, all in the total of 2.6. Now, under informal businesses, in total, we have saved 1,547 jobs, and the future jobs out of it, which would constitute 902, and those that were saved at 645. Under the enterprise support, in total, is 2,729 jobs that were impacted.
And the MEC
and 1.779 jobs are those that were created and saved as 950. And lastly, under the risk sharing, is 153 in total, which were impacted, 88 of them been saved, and the potential one that have been saved by the scheme. So in conclusion, Chair, I must indicate us through this intervention, there was hope that was brought to the Free State SMMEs, notwithstanding the budget constraints that the department is having. And I must state up front, Chair, that in conclusion, that there has never been any incident relating to corruption or fraud insofar as the scheme is concerned, other than only the appreciation that we receive from our SMMEs and the community at large. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair.
Thank you, MEC Mohale, for outlining various interventions that as a province of Free State you are putting in place to mitigate the damage. We will now move forward and invite the MEC of Gauteng, MEC Mosupaye. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Chair. It's Musupye. Yes.
I apologize.
No, it's fine. It's, yeah. It looks difficult, but it's fine. Thank you very much, Chair, for the invite. The Gauteng economic response is anchored on 5 key action points embedded in the Growing Gauteng Together 2030 action plan. The first one is around driving inclusive economic growth to benefit SMMEs, cooperatives, township businesses, youth, women, and persons with disability. The second one is to improve access to funding and grants and access to markets. So around improving access to markets, there's 2 key actions that we have taken. One is the bill that is doing rounds for public participation that you might be aware of, the Township Economic Bill. And the second one is that we have developed a policy that enjoins all of the departments in Gauteng to procure from SMMEs, first SMMEs that are in our database in all the departments, but also in the Gauteng Enterprise Propeller. But there's also room for SMMEs that are not listed with us to list with departments, relevant departments, or to list with the Gauteng Enterprise Propeller generally, where they can then access all of the procurement opportunities that are available in the department. The third one is increased infrastructure spend to create jobs. This is, it is mainly in the 2 departments, Human Settlements and DID. I'll speak to them later on. The fourth one is the rezoning of the taxi ranks into retail and commercial hubs. In this particular one, the Department of DED is working directly with the Department of Transport and the organized taxi formations. There's 2 of them at this particular moment that we're working with, and it is showing great progress so far. The last one is and the important one that has already created jobs so far is your special economic zones in the Gauteng corridors. There's 5 corridors. The first corridor that's already working is the Tshwane SEZ, which is a 17 billion rand investment working together with Ford Automotive to create Ford Rangers. Yeah, they're creating Ford Rangers. And I just want to give you an indication of how many jobs it's going to create. So it's going to create direct manufacturing jobs estimated for now that are about 2,388, and jobs that will be created during the construction. These have already started. At the end of the entire project, it would have created 8,647 jobs, and we are already close to a quarter of these jobs that are created through the Tshwane Automotive SEZ. On the action areas, I'm going to highlight only 4 areas. The first one is SMME and township enterprise empowerment. I've spoken to this partially when I mentioned the policy and the bill. So the second one is infrastructure as a booster for district development. This I already spoke to as well. The third one is partnerships with the private sector. I've spoken to this partially, but what is important here, what we're focusing on is the green economy, it's manufacturing, and it's ICT and agro-processing. So for ICT, it's one SEZ, which is in the northern corridor, I beg your pardon. It will be in the Bronkhorstspruit area. It's already in the feasibility study area. I think we're going to get feedback in the next 2 or 3 months, where the SEZ will then be, we can start then going out on tender to advertise for companies that are interested in partnering with us. So, and the other one on partnerships with private sector is what I spoke to, the Tshwane SEZ. We are in partnership with Ford there, and we have over 11 confirmed companies that are in partnership with us in that regard. The fourth one is, okay, this is the special economic zones that I spoke to. Okay, all the corridors, the 5 corridors in Gauteng are going to benefit from this particular engagement with the private sector. I'm running out of time. I just want to raise a few salient points. So I will jump directly now, Chairperson, to the jobs creation prospects. Under SMME support, we're looking at the creation of 2,500 jobs in this financial year through JEP Enterprise Support. JEP, you would know that it provides SMMEs with financial and non-financial support. So we are targeting 18,900 small enterprises in that regard. We are looking also at creating 15 auto sector incubators that we have already started. More than half of them are already on board. Under infrastructure development, we are looking at creating 11,857 jobs through the human settlement build projects. This is a cluster of departments in Gauteng. It's DED, it's human settlements, and DID. And we are also here focusing on youth-owned businesses. I spoke to investment, the 17 billion at the Tshwane SEZ. We are also looking at public-private growth initiatives. These we are envisaging them to be a mass job creator. And again, it is that that will be working at, that will be looking at. So, Chair, yes, it was as I concluded. I think I know for a fact that the presentation has been filed with yourself, so members will have time to go through it at their leisure. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, MEC, for outlining 5 key areas that Gauteng is embarking upon to mitigate the challenges of the pandemic. We will now move to KwaZulu-Natal and invite MEC Namasadube to come to the floor.
Albongo thandekayo wami.
Thank you, Chairperson, honorable members. Thank you very much for the opportunity. We wish to greet the Chairperson of the NCOP, Honorable Masondo, the Deputy Chairperson, Minister Ngesi, and the Deputy Minister, and my colleagues in the NCOP and MECs. I do wish to start, honorable members, by saying that as the province of KwaZulu-Natal, we have been working very hard across the province. Since March, we have worked together to deal with a number of matters relating to complaints that had to be received from the workers, from companies across the province, relating to the various legislation in trying to simplify regulation and legislation, but also communicate with all the community members about simplifying the measures we put in place as the risk mitigating to COVID-19. We also, as a province, set up what we call the one-stop shop, where we were aiming at assisting all the business as well as the SMME in applying for all the interventions that government had put in place, for them to be able to be assisted to apply and fill those forms and be able to also send those forms through our offices, including in our district offices, because we understood that the SMMEs would not have monies to download the forms and to actually even have monies to email forms. So we set up offices for them to be able to be assisted with working through our offices to download forms, to apply, and also to send those forms to get information on all the relief that was available from government. We also were able to assist the KZN applicants to access the National Temporary Relief Schemes, where we saw more than 1,805 KZN applicants being approved. We also wish to indicate that about 97.9 million was approved for the SMMEs in KwaZulu-Natal, which saved about 4,596 jobs. On the entrepreneurship, allow me, honorable members, to say that we have been able to use and assist in this pillar, where we work with the stakeholders in our economic reconstruction and transformation plan, that we work through our economic council, KZN Economic Council, where we sit with organized labor, organized civil society, organized business, and we work through this plan throughout the whole province. We wish to report that the department allocated more than 18.3 million through our Operation Vula to support existing SMMEs in the various commodities, such as the toilet paper or in pulp and paper, through the bakeries, through what we call the textile and clothing, as well as the other commodities that we had identified for SMMEs to be able to play, particularly chemicals and detergents, where we had asked the department and government departments in particular to can allocate those to SMMEs with an aim of ensuring that we create jobs, we enhance the industrial development through investment into these commodities, expanding government-led job creation programs by promoting the SMME entrepreneurship and promoting innovation and localization. We've also worked with informal traders across the province in ensuring that spaza shops, permits They are able to get their permits, informal traders are able to get their permits, and we supported a number of them with the skilling, as well as looking at various categories in our reconstruction plan, in creating various jobs. We have a lot of commodities, honorable members, that we have replaced. Otherwise, the companies would have been getting those commodities from China or India that we have identified as KZN, that those companies are now able to get to those commodities from our own SMMEs, as well as our companies here in KZN. And we're working very hard in upskilling and also funding small companies in ensuring that they take advantage of those opportunities that have been available to us. And managing retrenchments, honorable members, we are working with all the companies to ensure that those people that have been retrenched, they don't languish at home, but we have database of all those numbers where people must be rechanneled to other areas where there are growth, such as in agriculture, so that they get into the value chain of other areas where we are registering growth in those areas of the economy, so that people are able to be rechanneled. For instance, we've had a new hotel that is being opened when other people that were retrenched in one hotel were channeled in the new hotel, and they were able to get jobs in those new hotels that have just been opened. And we're working with very
thank you,
well
MEC.
with companies. Thank you, honorable members.
Thank you for those interventions as outlined to boost the SMMEs in the province of KwaZulu-Natal. We will now move to Limpopo and invite the MEC Mokoni. MEC Mokoni, you can take over now.
Honorable Chairperson, Honorable members of the National Council of Provinces, Honorable Minister Thulas Nxesi, Deputy Minister, my fellow MECs, invited participants, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It's a great honor to be afforded this opportunity to provide progress to the NCOP on our Limpopo implementing program that seeks to ensure the recovery of the provincial economy. We are meeting here today at a time when our lives have been disrupted by novel coronavirus. Many people have succumbed to the virus, but we are happy that 90% of those who were infected have recovered. The livelihoods of our people have been put under tremendous strain. A number of businesses have abruptly ceased to exist. Thousands of people have lost their income, and many are not certain of their future. Society is living in anxiety and fear every day of their lives. We are further wary of the impending second wave of the virus, which we must all prepare adequately for. Since the President, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, declared the state of disaster in March 2020, both national and provincial government has come up with relief programs to mitigate the devastating effects of the pandemic. In order to save lives, the province has developed and implemented a sector risk mitigation strategy across the main sector of the Limpopo economy that guided the resumption of economic activity. From the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, our journey has been defined by two main approaches: saving lives and protecting livelihoods and jobs. In Limpopo, SMEs were encouraged to take advantage of national relief programs. Most enterprises have applied for COVID-19 SME relief funds as provided for by different departments. 931 applications were approved for SME relief fund managed by the Department of Small Business Development, with 998 jobs being sustained and total disbursement in the province in a value of 3 million. 647 spaza shops and general dealers each received 3,500, which amounted to 1.5 million. 294 tourist guides received 4,500 each as a relief measure from National Tourism Relief Fund. 2,445 applicants were approved for agricultural disaster, fund for small holders and communal farmers, and they received an amount of 101 million. It can be confirmed that 597 beneficiaries received food parcel from the National Waste Pickers Relief Program. Each received 200. To protect livelihoods and jobs, the province has developed Limpopo Socio-Economic Recovery Plan. This recovery plan has been widely consulted with all industries and business formation in the province. The industrialization of the province and support to the SME and economy and cooperatives are the center of the Limpopo Socio-Economic Recovery Plan. The Limpopo Socio-Economic Recovery Plan has a long-term and a short-term intervention mechanism. The provincial government has set aside 3.5 billion. The largest proportion of the provincial government is allocated to social cluster, in which is health, education, and social development. 500 million has been allocated for support on the economic recovery in a short term. The funding is as follows: agriculture, it's 57 million, SME, 10 million, waste management, 7.8 million, industrialization program, 4.7 million, enterprise development, 10 million, Limpopo Tourism Relief Fund package, 10 million, road infrastructure, 400 million. The provincial relief funds are currently being rolled out. 449 applications are being adjudicated to tourism and waste management enterprises. The disbursement of funds for SME and cooperatives will begin in earnest in December 2021. In the medium to long term, the focus of the recovery plan is in the industrialization of the province through mega projects in the manufacturing, tourism, and agriculture sector, with a strong focus on 4IR support program. The province is forging ahead with the implementation of Musila Makado Special Economic Zone. The SEZ Metallurgical Complex has committed investment of 150 billion and is projected to create over 21,000 jobs. In addition to the process of finalizing the environment impact assessment, we are in the process of finalizing the environmental impact assessment. The Fitaho Mutuba Special Economic Zone is the second proposed SEZ, which will cost almost 25 billion and is expected to create 8,000 jobs. We are in advanced engagement with Glencoe to partner in the mining input supply park.
As the MEC concludes.
Yeah, and we are in partnership with the Department of Trade and Industry and Competition. We are dealing with the industrialization of industrial parks. We have committed 75 million and we're going to create 2,600 jobs. We also have the ICT Science and Technology Park, which is going to cost 4.7 million, and it will create almost 9.7. Lastly, the Lelwahomu Abattoir, which we have spoken about, it cost almost 200 million. It will create more than 500 jobs, which will earnestly start in the next financial year. Lastly, as I conclude, I must tell you about our future flagship project, where we seek national support towards the establishment and construction of high-speed rail from Johannesburg to Bedbridge to a triple P model. Our roads are under huge strain given our geo-strategic location, wherein we are connecting the Republic to the rest of the continent. Therefore, the high-speed train will reduce congestion on the road and connect the people of SADC region, thus creating economic benefit. I want to end my talk with a quotation from George Washington Carver, who said, "When you do the common thing in life in an uncommon way, you will command the attention of the world." Thank you, Chairperson.
MEC Mokone for outlining key interventions from the Limpopo side. We will now invite MEC Ngomani from Mpumalanga to outline the interventions that the Mpumalanga provincial government is bringing to the fore. Over to you, MEC Ngomani.
Thank you, Chairperson, and honorable members. Greetings from South Africa powerhouse, Mpumalanga, the place of the rising sun. Chairperson, let me start off by extending our appreciation for having invited our province, which is represented by the Department of Economic Development and Tourism, to address this august house of our parliament. Indeed, we all agree that the COVID-19 pandemic has and continues to devastate impact on our economy, including our job creation efforts. The latest available information indicates that Mpumalanga will also record a negative growth rate of around -7% this year. The most affected provincial economic sectors and industries are construction, trade, manufacturing, as well as transport and communication. Agriculture, as you know, will be least affected in our province. We remain highly concerned that our provincial tourism industry, which is an important economic contributor and job driver in our province, has permanently laid off quite a large number of people from their jobs. Overall, anticipated total provincial job losses will be between 110 to 150,000 this year. And many of these losses will be especially in construction and trade, plus tourism. Job losses in the SMME sector, including the informal sector, remain our big concern, given that more than 40% of recorded job losses in Mpumalanga during Q2 of this year were experienced in the informal sector. To this end, the results of second quarter of 2020 quarter labor force survey released by Statistics South Africa indicated job losses of almost 134 under hard lockdown alert level 4 and 5 in the province. As such, the provincial unemployment rate, as per the expected definition, has increased to 45% during the same period. These job losses will impact negatively on consumer spending eventually on the poverty and inequality of our province. Chairperson, as a provincial of Mpumalanga, we could thus not fold our hands. Hence, we had to come up with mitigation plans in our quest to turn things around in order to improve inclusive economic growth and create more job opportunities for people of our province. We will increase the industrial base of the province through value addition and value chain development, beneficiation, and agro-processing. We will strengthen support to women and youth and own small businesses and cooperatives. We will build an inclusive rural and township economy. We will mobilize development funding amongst others.
Conclude.
According to agriculture and manufacturing, mining, tourism, as well as new economy will remain our key focus economic sectors and industry for rapid economic growth and job creation. We therefore commit industry to work very close and tried our level best that in the province, we concentrate more on the issue of agriculture and put more support to tourism recovery plan, because as a province, that is where we think is where most of our effort must be concentrated, and more of our effort must be also showed in agriculture, as you know that this province is an agricultural province.
Thank you.
I think those are the issues which we thought we can share with the committee. Thank you.
Manibongwe ngomani.
Bringing to the House, what are the key sectors of the economy that as in Mpumalanga will be focusing on? We will again invite MEC Mvoko from Eastern Cape. MEC Mvoko. Thank you, Chief Whip. We will now move to Northwest and invite MEC Mosenuchi to table the provincial specific from the northern side. MEC Mosenuchi.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson of the session, the Chairperson, Deputy Chairperson of the NCOP, and members of the NCOP, special delegates to the NCOP, fellow members of the Executive Council from provinces, and the Minister of Labor and Employment. Honorable Chairperson, the wise man once wrote that the resilience of nations is manifest in their ability to anticipate and prepare for shocks, which in turn depends on the technical capacities of organizations and institutions at the forefront of crisis response. The overall functioning of country system and the governance structure that sets the rules of the game. The wise man further stated that while institutions perform in the foundation of state capacity to function and fulfill its obligations towards its citizens, it is not a sufficient condition for countries that need to respond to the shocks and deal with the changing environment that we are experiencing, like we are now of COVID-19. It will also require a stable institution and fundamentally that is resilient in terms of its capacity. Honorable Chairperson of the session, the Northwest Provincial Government, in response to COVID-19 and managing the impact in the economy, it's tried to manage to come into focus on three-tier process based in as follow: relief, recovery, and sustainability. And central to all these three tiers, it's sustaining jobs. It's about also compliance and also maximizing in terms of the procurement spent by government, the department and its entities. And most importantly, it's about localization and industrialization. In terms of the relief, which was largely targeted at keeping companies afloat, offload and preventing job losses, amongst others. The province worked with the different DFIs in the province, reporting under national departments to make sure that we assist different SMMEs to submit their applications for relief funds that were made available nationally. And of importance, and I would not want to go into detail on the total number of beneficiaries, I think
it looks like we have lost the ABC. Can the table try to sort that out? ABC Lusanore? It looks like your reception is not that good, MEC. Can we then, while the MEC is still trying to sort the connectivity, move forward? We have lost you, MEC.
Oh,
I want to suggest that we move forward and then invite the representative from Western Cape, Ms. Bartman. Ms. Bartman, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairperson. Honorable Chairperson, fellow South Africans, thank you for the opportunity to engage with this House today. Unfortunately, the Provincial Minister for Finance and Economic Opportunities had a prior work commitment, and it's been requested that I report back from the Western Cape Provincial Parliament based on my role as Chairperson of our Standing Committee with the oversight function over the Executive. The Western Cape Government has taken the position that the COVID-19 pandemic would impact on the lives and livelihoods of the people in the Western Cape, and therefore it is important that we work hard to support businesses in order to open safely and responsibly as soon as possible. In April, the Western Cape Government released a risk-adjusted approach and engaged with 445 economic stakeholders and received over 40 submissions, which together with the provincial government's own detailed submission was submitted to the Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs. Many of the Western Cape's recommendations were included in the respective regulations, and the provincial government's continued lobbying has included the opening of e-commerce, construction and tourism sectors, which have been successful. In order to support small business, the Western Cape Province has set up a COVID-19 content center with Westkro and the City of Cape Town to provide support and advice for businesses during the crisis. Almost 230,000 residents have used this site. It has launched the COVID-19 Support Finder, which helps businesses navigate and access financial relief packages, and nearly 7,000 businesses have utilized this tool. And the Red Tape Reduction Unit has assisted businesses, including small businesses, with important information such as how to start a business, where to register, as well as red tape related issues, and over 1,200 queries have been dealt with by this unit. The Red Tape Reduction Unit have also liaised directly with the Department of Employment and Labour to address the challenges that the province have had in the distribution of UIF TERS funds in a timely manner, as well as followed up with the National Department to request expedited finalization of the UIF TERS applications, which has resulted in almost 3,000 employees being able to access the necessary UIF TERS relief scheme in the Western Cape. The tourism sector is one of the top industries within the Western Cape, and it has been hard hit by the national regulations. In order to assist the sector, the province has launched a Tourism Product Development Fund, which commits to a total of 5 million rand to support tourism products in the Western Cape and supplements training needs through a virtual webinar series. The provincial government has further invested in a domestic and international tourism campaign strategically to remind visitors of both the beauty and business significance of the province. The province is, however, concerned about the approach of national government towards reopening our borders. Instead of differentiating per country, we ought to require that all travelers produce proof of a negative COVID-19 test result not older than 72 hours from the time of departure, supplemented by vigorous screening on arrival and antigen testing at the airport. To get our residents safely back to work and kickstart the economy, the province has provided health guidelines, a PPE marketplace to support small businesses and business safety, and a mechanism for reporting COVID-19 protocol violations. 96% of such non-compliance reports have already been resolved. Finally, to promote transparency, our provincial treasury was the first to release regular procurement disclosure reports on provincial COVID-19 expenditure. The second edition revealed that the province had spent 47% of its COVID-19 expenditure on small and medium enterprises, amounting to 669 million rand. The Western Cape government remains committed to helping businesses open safely and responsibly as soon as possible. And together we can save jobs and save the economy within the Western Cape. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Bartman. Honorable MEC Musenogi was left with a minute before she could conclude. Can we allow MEC Musenogi to exhaust a minute? Over to you, Honorable MEC.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. As I was saying, we've received more than 6,000 applications on the provincial relief, which we have processed until about 35%, and the processing is still ongoing. We have further provided holiday payments on some of the funding that we have provided through the Northwest Development Corporation, and further provided holiday payment holiday for SMMEs who are occupying who are renting in some of our properties owned by the provincial government. And furthermore, Chair, we have, as the provincial government, employed screeners across the province in all different provincial offices across the province, and also in different schools. We have also, with the Department of Public Works and Entities, we have a target of employing more than 25,000 EPWP, and in the first quarter of the financial year, more than 9,000 EPWP opportunities have been created. The province, furthermore, through SASSA, has reported more than 597,000 beneficiaries on the 350 relief funding. And in terms of the business compliance that we have conducted, we have also supported other small businesses who we have observed that they are not compliant, but it's also as a result of the cost that require businesses to prepare in order for them to be ready to open businesses. And we have supported them with the PPE for their workers to start as announced in the lockdown level 2 and level 1. In terms of corruption, there's not been reported cases of corruption as yet in the province, but however, we have released the COVID-19 expenditure, and I have subjected ourselves to the special audit by the Auditor General. Thank you very much. We have further made ourselves available to cooperate with the law enforcement agencies on all the processes and investigation as it relates to the procurement of COVID-19 funds, be it of PPE or in terms of the expenditure of the relief fund. And thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you, MEC Musenogi. MEC Vosloo from Northern Cape.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you, Chairperson. Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Deputy Chairperson, Honorable House Chairpersons, Honorable Minister of Employment and Labour, Honorable Deputy Ministers, Honorable colleagues, MECs, Chairpersons of committees, Provincial whips, party whips, special delegates, good afternoon. Greetings from the warm hearts of the people in the Northern Cape. Thanks for this opportunity and this honor. Honorable members, the structure of the economy of our province suggests that the key drivers of employment are agriculture and mining. These sectors remain the catalyst for economic growth, jobs, and prosperity. Be that as it may, these sectors also experience significant decline in productivity and also shed significant numbers of jobs due to the impact of the COVID-19. The almost 10,000 jobs shed by the agriculture sector could be apportioned to the seasonal factors. However, the COVID-19 lockdown imposed restrictions have certainly also contributed. This is despite efforts by all spheres of government attempting to increase the provision of food to the most vulnerable in the province and the country in broad terms. As a department, we are rolling out the Economic Growth and Development Fund, which aims to serve as an incentive scheme for SMMEs in the province. This program was put on hold for the current financial year as the allocations were shifted for the COVID-19 intervention. This fund is an important instrument to empower our small and emerging enterprises, which has the potential to cause a dent in high levels of poverty and create much needed jobs in the informal sector. We are in the process of reviewing the grant and are putting measures in place to mitigate the risks involved in ensuring administrative responsibilities in respect to service level agreements prior to the disbursement of the funds to SMMEs. We will present a new disbursement model as soon as consultations with relevant structures are concluded. Honorable members, the Northern Cape Provincial Administration has mooted the economic sector, investment, employment, and infrastructure development plan. The plan is a broad framework which aims to solicit support from the economic sector for provincial economic recovery. The response from the provincial government pertaining to the COVID-19 pandemic and measures is twofold, i.e., to offer financial and non-financial support for relief and growth, to provide support in the recovery phase. As a province, we have decided to put the following practical measures in place to serve as a stimulus to boost economic activities within the province. An amount of 25 million rand has been set aside to respond to the job opportunities, and projects in this category will be spread equitably across the province to reach as many as possible and will be fashioned along EPWP schemes. A further amount of 15 million rand has been set aside to assist township and informal businesses across the province. The intervention is directed at providing support to informal enterprises to access funding from the Department of Small Business Development and to improve their businesses by supplying them with machinery and equipment. Already, 39 companies benefited from the National Relief Program, amounting to 11.7 million rand, saving or creating about 359 jobs in the province. The spaza shops in the province, 38 spaza shops benefited from the applications that have been submitted in the province. The tourism sector is one that has been particularly affected during the pandemic. An amount of 5 million rand of funding will be directed to the recovery projects within the tourism fraternity. An amount of 40 million rand has been set aside to fund catalytic projects, and these are projects that will have a long-term impact on the economy of the Northern Cape and will be able to attract additional investment in our economy. The department has budgeted an amount of 75 million rand to stimulate the economy to support local enterprises. We are in discussion with stakeholders to establish an enterprise development fund and will be based on a blended financial model, partly grant and partly loan. This will be done in partnership with established stakeholders. The department is also playing a leading role in terms of assisting with the Namakwa SEZ, the Uppington Industrial Park, and also the Katu Industrial Park in terms of all the preliminary studies that should be done. Furthermore, the Township and Rural Entrepreneurial Program is still continuing throughout the entire province in all districts. We can also say that 1,500 young people will be benefiting from the UIF training that will be rolled out during next month. Lastly, an amount of 2.1 million rand will be spent on crafts and arts development in the province, and that will also take place during the beginning of next year. Thank you so much, Chairperson.
Thank you, MEC Foslo, for outlining what are the key areas of intervention that the province is focusing on. We'll revert back to the Eastern Cape MEC Mvoko. MEC Mvoko.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. From the members at large, we have, as the Eastern Cape, developed a five-pillar strategy to assist our enterprises, given that in the period of lockdown, most of them were severely affected to the extent that most of them were about to shut down. As part of that intervention, the first thing we did was to ensure that they benefit in all the relief schemes that are found, that were made available. And that we did with the local government by partnering in ensuring that we train officials throughout the province that will be able to assist enterprises to benefit from the relief schemes. And 155 SMMEs through that training were able to benefit from the relief schemes, as well as 705 applications were approved, and that all of that came through the assistance by local government officials and provincial governments. A total of 732 Eastern Cape tourism businesses applied, and 457 were successful, as well as 182 tour guides were successful. And the second one is a provincial relief to distressed companies. We have a support to manufacturing in distress, and this is called a Manufacturer Support Center. It's a self-help portal that operates 24 hours, and it targets manufacturing and agro processing. As we speak, 144 companies have logged to date, with a total impact of 5,876 jobs to be affected. This cuts across from auto, non-auto, agro processing, and tourism. We use the Eastern Cape Job Stimulus Fund to provide financial and non-financial support, and this is linked to our provincial stimulus fund. For SMMEs with 20 million rand turnover per annum, we give 10,000 rand funding for each job saved. For SMMEs below 20 million rand turnover per annum, we give a 3-month working capital incentive to ensure that they can sustain. We allocated 17.4 million rand at the start, but with additional funding that we got from Treasury, now the amount has now grown to 75 million rand. And we think if we use the 75 million rand, it will go a long way in incentivizing all of those that have saved job. Currently, we have more than 13 distressed businesses that have been approved. And in the pipeline, we have about 27 applications for the relief. We also, from the Eastern Cape Development Corporation, run a loan funding for small businesses. We offer finance at competitive rates while taking into account the historical lack of access of small to medium enterprises to finance. So we've got a short-term loan that is geared towards facilitating efficient cash flow management of clients' businesses. Currently, 24 SMMEs have already received finance on this intervention. We have grant fundings for enterprises. This grant funding, we have instruments that we have always been using to finance ideas of all of applications. We've got the local and regional economic development fund, the grant funding of qualifying enterprises operating in the Eastern Cape with a focus on long-term sustainability. The startup on the enterprises, it's 100% grant. If it's a startup, it's 100% grant funding, not exceeding 3 million rand. On the existing enterprises, perhaps they want to expand, it is between 70 to 90% grant funding, depending on the size of the turnover. And we also do some emergency funding. The second instrument is this Instalo Youth Fund, which is also focused on the youth. And the last funding is Informal Fund, which is focused on cooperatives. All of these instruments are now being used to ensure that we enhance and we save jobs within the province using these instruments and funding them. Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you, ABC Vogo, for taking us into confidence as the House in terms of where the Eastern Cape is, in terms of arresting the situation, identifying key areas of intervention. We will now invite Honorable Hlongwane from SALGA to give us SALGA's perspective.
Honorable Chairpersons and Honorable Deputy Chairpersons, the Honorable Minister and Honorable MECs from all provinces, members and special delegates receive greetings from the South African Local Government Association. We are very much pleased as a SALGA to be part of the ministerial briefing on the progress made on the measures to mitigate the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on employment and labor. Honorable Chairpersons, we are meeting here today while the global community is being decimated by the novel COVID-19 pandemic, which has caused a threat and disruptions to the broader labor and the employment programs of the country. The South African Local Government Association, as a part of responding and mitigating to the global pandemic, we have partnered with international organizations under the United Nations Development Program to support the emerging businesses and informal traders, but specifically targeting municipalities that are under-resourced. The interventions, amongst others, include the supply of PPEs, food parcels, capacity programs, and strategy development. Honorable Chairpersons, we remain mindful of not falling into the temptations of trying to do everything at once. Rather, we intend to focus on the fewer interventions that have the potential to yield greater outcomes. And as SALGA, we have identified the following strategies which we think will work in terms of these mitigations. The one aspect is the leveraging of the partnerships. As SALGA, while we acknowledge that many of the resources do not lie within but elsewhere, we are solidifying the existing partnerships while creating ones, including drawing on the vast expertise of the private sector. The second aspect of our strategies is around the creations of the data repository for small businesses and informal traders. Through SALGA Data Analytics Unit, we intend to create a data portal that will make it possible for input and to extract and to analyze the data. The third aspect is the creations of the decentralized economy of the smaller and job creation enterprises. We believe that this will be done through, amongst others, the employment of a municipal procurement as the key lever for driving local economic development and the creations of an enterprise ecosystems that is underpinned by the local embedded value chains. This will counter the current state of the market that is heavily concentrated and untransformed. The fourth aspect is the investment promotions and the red tape reductions. We believe that through SALGA trade and investment programs, we are supporting municipalities to expedite the investment decisions as to avoid any undue delays that may jeopardize the investment. The last aspect of our strategy as SALGA is the informal economy. We believe that the development of the standard model bylaws for municipalities, because the post-COVID economy will require municipalities to adopt less restrictive and more facilitative posture in dealing with the informal sector. Honorable Chairpersons, there is a growing consensus, not just within our shores, but globally, that the informal economy is rapidly becoming an integral part of the economy, and most notable in the global south. A paradigm shift in mindset is beginning to emerge, where the informal economy is no longer viewed as an extension of the mainstream economy or placed on the margins, therefore. In this area of work, SALGA has been actively participating in the resolutions 204 under the national task teams led by the Department of Employment and Labor. That seeks to bring into the fruitions of the R204 recommendations of supporting the informal economy through, amongst others, the building of an enabling regulatory and the policy architecture. SALGA recognizes the importance of the sector, and to this end, we have already extended support to municipalities in making our towns and cities more accommodating to informal traders and other participants in the informal sector. We have done this through supporting municipalities to review their bylaws by providing them with a model bylaws that are less restrictive and punitive.
Does the honorable member conclude?
Thanks, Chairpersons. Honorable Chairpersons, in conclusions, let me say that never before has there been a greater obligations on all of us to build local governments and to recalibrate the economy. I have no doubt that through partnerships and cooperations, we shall triumph. And out of this long period of the turbulence and uncertainty, we shall emerge stronger than before. Thanks so much, Chairpersons.
Thank you for elaborating SALGA's approach, which in a broader scheme of things displays the interdependentness and the interrelatedness of these three spheres in terms of responding to the pandemic. Honorable members, we will now open the floor for engagement, discussion to the positions as advanced from the non-provincial government and also SALGA. The floor is open.
Chair, you would also look at the.
Honorable Namaskar.
No, I propose that you also look at the online.
I'm definitely looking at the screen, Honorable Namaskar. Honorable members can indicate through utilizing the raise your hand option.
Yes, Matt.
I get a sense that honorable members are comfortable and there's a clarity of thought in terms of the positions as advanced by the ABC. And in that situation, can I then take this opportunity on behalf of the House to express our sincere gratitude to all the honorable MECs who participated in this series of engagement, particularly outlining key areas of intervention, but also making use of the interventions that the government has put on the table through various financial measures, but more than that, outlining the key opportunities that has been grabbed with both hands. Honorable members will remember that in response to the can members use the raise your hand option? You are recognized?
Chairperson, am I recognized?
Is that Honorable Mukause? Yes, you are recognized.
Chairperson, let me just firstly also raise my dissatisfaction. The table staff must not enter into political issues here and try and mute us unnecessarily. I was muted unnecessarily, I don't know why. I have tried before you even conclude the discussion with the presenters. I wanted to raise a few questions here, Chairperson. Chairperson, I don't know if you are not, as the governing party, not alarmed or concerned about a number of affected sectors during COVID-19, like the women's sector, the young people sector, the unemployed sector in this country, who continuously are discriminated relating to the COVID fund and have been dismissed and millions of young people remain. How can we get response relating to that? How are you responding as a governing party? They're also not able to access the 350 social relief grants. Can the NECs who actually presented here today tell us per province how many young people or how many unemployed people have actually accessed the 350 social relief grant? What are these provinces doing to support young people and women who are largely affected by COVID-19? We all know that majority of provinces do not have water. Majority of provinces do not have proper housing, do not have sanitation, and they are expected in a process to actually comply with the COVID-19 regulations. Can the provinces actually outline as to per province how many of the unemployed received the COVID relief and what have they done to support these sectors that I've just mentioned? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Mukause. The focus of the briefing was specific in terms of the presentation as led by the Minister of Employment and Labor on two areas, unemployment insurance and also compensation fund. And we then invited the province to outline key areas of intervention, but more specific in terms of economic sectors, various sectors that they are using. But what we also did at the beginning, we outlined provincial specifics in terms of the contributions that were accessed per province within the broader global figure of 45 billion that has been accessed from the UIF. What will then conclude on, I think, is to agree that I think the issues that you are raising, obviously, I think the MECs are listening attentively. They will pay attention to that. Honorable Nana.
Oh, thank you. Chair, thanks a lot, man. I had sneaked out for a short while. I wouldn't know if this issue was raised, but if it has been raised, please rule me out of order. Chair, I'm a bit concerned, man, about MECs who are not in this meeting. For instance, in the case of the Eastern Cape, and there's not a personal attack on anyone. In the case of the Eastern Cape,
can I just arrest the situation? The MEC was the last part. The last.
Oh, sorry, I'm sorry. I sneaked out. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Honorable Nana. Honorable members, like as I indicated, I think let us take this opportunity to express our gratitude to the MECs, Salga, who took part in this discussion by outlining various provincial specifics in terms of what is it that is being done to access the opportunities that the government has outlined. But more than that, adding an element of agency in terms of ensuring that we arrest the key challenges, which is the joblessness that has emerged as a result of the pandemic. And we want to believe that through this interaction, the department led by the minister was able to embrace what are the key areas of focus that he will be riding on to ensure that there is an added impetus at the level of provinces to ensure that indeed we arrest the situation. And on those few notes, can I then again hand over the reins back to the national chairperson of the council, Honorable Basondo. My humble appreciation.
Chairperson.
Honorable Mukause, I've made a ruling on the matter. Can the honorable member
I've
just
never raised a point of order.
allow the
I've never raised a
situation
point of order, so you couldn't have made a ruling. When a point of order is raised, it is then you can make a ruling. I didn't raise a point of order. I raised point of clarities. So I was under the impression that when you open the session to MECs from different provinces, MECs are expected to respond. Now, I've raised matters.
Honorable Mukause, can you just allow me to conclude this session and hand over the reins back to
Can't
Honorable.
conclude it now because I'm on the platform raising a point of order.
Honorable
you need to hear me
Basondo,
out and then first.
Honorable National
Chairperson?
Chair of the Council of Province, the session is back.
Chairperson of the session.
Thank you. The floor is yours, Honorable Chair.
Thank you very much, honorable members. Honorable Ngwenya is supposed to now take over for the last remaining two items of our program. Is Honorable Ngwenya there?
Thanks, Chairperson, and good afternoon to everybody. I'm here, Chairperson.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. Chair, now we are on the section 3, and Chairperson, I would like you to invite Minister Honorable Mr. Ngesi to do his closing remarks. After him, then I'll be asking the. to
Chairperson of
do
the
the closing
session.
remarks.
Chairperson of the session.
Hello, hello.
I've raised
Hello, ma'am.
on a point of order. Mema Ngwenya, I've
Yes.
raised on a point of order when Honorable Moimang was on the floor. Normally, when the
Okay.
MCs from provinces are given an opportunity to present in the National Council of Provinces, they actually need to respond on camera. They actually need to respond on the spot. Why are they not given an opportunity to respond? Because I have raised issues relating to MECs from different provinces. So you cannot conclude by saying you are actually closing the session because you feel so. It is unconstitutional. It goes against the rules of the council. So can you give the MECs to respond to the two questions that I've asked? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Member, I think you do have a program in front of you in terms of my duty now. I'm a program director for Section 3. Then therefore you are talking about Section 2. I'm on the Section 3. Therefore, I would
Chairperson?
like you to take the ruling
Chair,
to continue
on a point of
with
order.
with my Section 3. I cannot
Chairperson,
continue
on a
with
point of
Section
order.
2. Meanwhile, the chairperson have given me a chance for Section 3.
On a point of order, Chairperson. When you
Provided
took
I'm
over
not
from
repeating what you have been saying.
when you took over from Honorable Masondo, who took over from Honorable Moimang, I was audible enough. I was on the platform. They chose to ignore me. So I'm taking you back to the section that Honorable Moimang was on. I want you to put it on record that, in fact, when you invite MECs from provinces, they are not obligated to respond to members of the council. You can do as you wish. They can present. Even if we ask questions, they are not obligated to respond to honorable members of this council, because this is exactly what Honorable Moimang did and Honorable Masondo and gave over to you. I'm giving you a chance to correct the mistakes of the two chairpersons. Can you, in your capacity as a chairperson of the session, tell us if these MECs are going to respond to what I've raised or not? And if they're not going to respond, why not?
Honorable Member, I would like to take the ruling to continue with Section 3 as I've given to deal with Section 3. I'm taking a ruling of that. Thank you. Honorable Minister, can you please come in?
House Chairperson, what is the ruling?
I'm ruling that we continue with Section 3.
Are you ruling that MECs from provinces are just here on the courtesy of the ANC? They are not obligated to respond to the council. Is that what you are saying?
Continue with Section 3. Siyaqhubeka ngo Section 3.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairperson. And thank you to all the honorable members for your comments and contribution. We learn and improve from constructive criticism and suggestion. But I just want to say that the coronavirus attacked us like a coward. It gave us absolutely no time to prepare. It gave us no time to research. It gave us no time to put together comprehensive plans that would have tested several times to ensure that it would stand the complex operations during the lockdown period. And it gave us no time to pilot any plans. And it gave us no time to even borrow working methods and templates that are effective somewhere else and only adjust and adapt them to our conditions. Chairperson, I just want to say, the question was asked as to what are we doing to mitigate the expected large-scale retrenchments in the region of 2 million. And this is a question or this is a question about the National Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan, which will be announced by the President on Thursday. I can say this, that the President has consulted fully with all sections of government as well as social partners in NETLEC, indeed all partners, business, labor, and community. They were specifically invited to make proposals. And from my side, I would add that in addition to the stimulus measures, there are plans for mass employment programs, but let us wait for the President to pronounce on that. The issue raised about the minimum wage was not actually on the agenda for today's engagement. But I will say that world over, different rules apply to security and intelligence services. And I think the honorable member who asked this issue knows that. For the record, the employer in NETLEC agreed to this arrangement as part of the engagement around the adoption of the minimum wage, including business, which the honorable member claims to be speaking on their behalf. In my initial input, I've listed all measures taken to implement the AG's recommendation. These measures are well underway and we are working closely with the AG's office in this respect. In relation to the provincial plans presented here today, these are linked to sustainability of the UIF and the compensation fund. Their health is linked to the level of economic activity across the country. And for the record, before the UIF committed to pay COVID-19 TERS benefits, this was done after consultation with the board and the actuaries. And the board of UIF is representative of all social partners, including business. Initially, we budgeted 40 billion. With the extension of the lockdown, the continuing need for income support to laid off workers, we projected that we would need to budget for 60 billion. And I can assure you that we are closely monitoring the liquidity and sustainability of the fund. And this will not put us at risk. Equally, COVID-19 TERS payments and ordinary UIF benefits are an important part of the economic activity and resources availed in the provinces. These benefits contributed to economic activity in the provinces and in every corner of the country. But if we want to succeed, it is going to be a collective effort of all of us, private and the public sector, all the spheres of government, not name calling and blame shifting and so on, but it needs a collective effort of this country to move forward. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you, Minister. And now I would like to call the whip, the Chief Whip to do the closing remarks. Thank you. Chief Whip.
Thank you very much, House Chair. I have been warned here that I should not be long. So I will comply as such. The first thing I want to raise is that we acknowledge the presence.
Can the Chief Whip take a seat? I'm rising on a point of order.
Honorable member, please can we...
Chairperson, before the Chief Whip addresses the House, I would love the Council to note that, in fact, whatever other parties are raising in this House, are deemed unnecessary by the ruling elite. They protect those who come from provinces to come and present. They are not even instructed to respond to political parties which form part of this democratic order. And chairperson,
Point of order.
the incompetency
Point of order,
of the chairperson of this council seems to be actually disrupting the proceedings, natural proceedings of the National Council of Provinces. So, Chairperson,
Point of order, Chairperson.
before the Chief Whip could address the council, I would wanted the Chief Whip to actually speak.
What is the point of order? What is the point of order of this member?
Chair, I
Honourable
rise on a point of order in terms of on the irrelevance of the issues raised by the honourable member that is on the floor. Thank you, Chair. Can you rule on that?
You don't know.
Who's speaking right now?
No, who was that now? That is not a point of order. You must listen to the point of order.
Honourable members.
Member Makausi has raised a valid point of order, Chairperson.
Honourable members.
And what the rule?
The rule
is point right of order. Or wrong, but the way you are behaving, you are not assisting me. I'll ask the Chief Whip to do the closing remarks, please.
Chairperson, you didn't listen to our member there. Member Makausi has raised the point of order and she was interrupted.
I hope
I've done my ruling. Chief Whip, can you please do your...
What is your ruling, Chairperson?
I hope that the table will
take the ruling already.
An attempt to cause chaos in the proceedings of the House that is discussing a very important subject should not be tolerated. This is the first hybrid session of the National Council of Provinces. And we're discussing the matter here around COVID-19, the issue that touches at the heart of majority of our people. Our constituencies are seeking answers on this matter. Some of us attend this house mandated through our interaction with our people, and we should treat it as such, as their tribute to contribute to what they have shared with us. I want to acknowledge the Chief Whip of the majority party here at the gallery, Comrade Chief Whip Hemima Jodina. Say something. Welcome the Chief Whip. I mean, he's the Chief Whip of the majority party here. And also first of all, to really that we continue to, through many other ways, through our prayers and other things we can do. And I'm happy that Honorable Baby is on her way to recovery. So we have seen Honorable Baby, quite committed member of this house, and the deputy chair of the Council of Provinces. So we're quite happy to welcome you back, and also wish that Joe Monyambe fully recovers. He has taken a void in the loss of his brother in the past weeks. So we wish that he recovers. And I think that members of the NCOP have matured across narrow political lines to understand that we value human life and we should act above petty squabbles to deal with these matters as very important matters. And then Mayor Ethel Nkosi, you are most welcome to this house. You'll enjoy this chamber. Never shy down to raise your ideas in this house. The corner that you occupy, never shy down to raise your ideas. People that side are very vocal. I hope you take note they are very vocal, so you'll have to live up to that expectation. Perhaps I must begin by commending the Minister of Employment and Labor, Comrade Thulas Nesi, for an honest presentation around the challenges that we face as a country and the strides government is making in relation to these challenges. We appreciate that this pandemic has no precedence in our contemporary period, and we also take a view that it has definitely taken all countries by great surprise, including developed countries. None of us could have reasonably anticipated at the beginning of the year that the economy, and by extension, employment, will be disrupted as they are right now. Although we are yet to establish the full extent of the damage, we note that the impact could have been more adverse, but for the solid leadership of our government and hoping that, in fact, not hoping, knowing that the president has called joint sitting of the House, we believe that we will have more on what the government approach is in mitigating the impact of COVID-19. In our context, many workers and their families will inevitably be affected by this pandemic, which could have an adverse impact on labor market and create instability into the foreseeable future. As a consequence, there is a need for cooperation between government, business, and organized labor to negotiate our country out of this economic reality. Similar intervention must be sought for majority of our people who operate in an informal sector as direct mechanism to save livelihoods. We cannot deny that we have a serious crisis in our hands as a country. Although it is commendable that the government earlier established key intervention to manage the impact of the pandemic, we know that these efforts have been undermined by the mishandling and misappropriation of intended funds for this purpose. However, we welcome the report that a huge bulk of these funds have been recovered, and law institutions are looking into the matter. As the ANC, we are unequivocal to support measures to track and to close the space for those corrupt elements in private or in public institutions, where, however sophisticated ways they are colluding to sidetrack the resources to benefiting the people that they are intended for. So we cannot deny that we have a serious crisis in our hands as a country. We have to deal with it. There are many other issues that require urgent attention, including controls and consequence management across departments to cap some of these things. The minister was frank about these challenges, a development that demonstrates intention on the part of government to deal with decisively with these issues. And our MECs have shared their reports. And I must say, none amongst us should create an impression that the reports that the MECs have shared, we have had an opportunity to go through them. Comprehensive reports surely will reach us, and I will go through this information.
Those are just lies.
And we should understand conceptually what it means to say, this is the ministerial briefing. And a howler like Mukausi will continue to howl and disrupt the minister from giving an account, and understand that this is not a scheduled debate. This is a scheduled briefing. From wherever she comes from, whenever she reaches the house, opportunistic as she is, she wants to disrupt this house, that it deteriorates. We'll never match you, your anarchic behavior. We are not interested in your anarchic behavior. We are interested in the issue at hand. We'll certainly monitor the performance of the minister and government broadly in implementing key interventions announced to respond to some of these issues. This is a commitment that we are making. And I must say that being chief whip of this house, working together in a responsible manner with the chief whips in our forum. We discuss these issues. We set time aside. We have a forum to evaluate our programs. So we'll do so accordingly. Thanks to the minister, thanks to the MECs, thanks to the honorable members of this house.
Thanks, Chief Whip. Thanks to the honorable members and all the MECs from 9 provinces. And, the House, Salga also would like to thank you. The House is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Comrade.
Malibongwe, Chief Whip, Malibongwe.
Bibi, you are looking very well.
Yabulela.
Mama Winnie.
Yes, yes, Deputy Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. No, it was very good.
I'm happy to see you that you are well, darling.
Through the grace of God and at least back. Like a Jabalegi saying, we are war veterans. We survived the pandemic.
Okay, thanks, ma'am.
Thank you.
Mangwe.
Yebo, Baba.
Yebo, mama.
Manje voice take kanje.
Honorable House Chair, umusodi uthethayo.
My sister, how are
Umusodi
you?
uthethayo.
How are you, baby girl?
I'm fine, and how are you, House Chair?
I'm fine.
You did well.
Thanks, ma.
Thanks very much. You did well, Chair.
Those are corner lezi ezinye sesizijwayele.
But it's